The smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee filled the air at Joe's Diner, a humble eatery tucked into a corner of Austin, Texas. Melanie Brooks weaved expertly between the tightly packed tables, balancing 2 plates on one arm and a coffee pot in her free hand. Her shift was halfway through, but her feet already ached, and the relentless stream of customers showed no signs of slowing. "Table 7's been waiting for 20 minutes, Melanie," barked her boss, Mr. Carver, a grumpy man in his 50s whose primary joy seemed to be micromanaging his staff. "I'm on it," Melanie replied, flashing her warm, practiced smile. Just as she turned toward table 7, the bell above the door jingled. A man in his 40s stumbled in, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his face and a worn leather jacket. He looked disheveled, his jeans streaked with dirt, and his hands shaking slightly as he clutched his phone. "Excuse me," he muttered to no one in particular, scanning the room like he was searching for something or someone. Melanie paused. It wasn't unusual for the diner to see its fair share of eccentric customers, but something about this man's nervous demeanor caught her attention. His lips were pale, and sweat glistened on his forehead despite the chilly December air. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, stepping toward him. The man shook his head. I think I'm having low blood sugar or something. Do you have orange juice?" Or, before he could finish, Melanie guided him to an empty booth near the window. "Sit down. I'll grab some juice for you." Ignoring Mr. Carver's glare from across the room, she darted to the counter, poured a glass of orange juice, and brought it back. The man gulped it down like it was life itself. "Thank you," he murmured, his breathing evening out. "No problem," Melanie said. "Do you need anything else? Food? Maybe? A doctor?" He shook his head. "No, this is fine. You've been very kind." Melanie didn't press him further. She left to attend to her other tables, but kept an eye on him. A few minutes later, he waved her over and handed her a $100 bill. "Thank you for your kindness," he said simply. "It means a lot." Melanie's eyes widened. I can't accept this." "Please," he insisted, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his cap. "And Merry Christmas." The man slipped out the door before Melanie could protest further. She stood there for a moment, staring at the bill in her hand, unsure whether to feel grateful or guilty. "Melanie!" Mr. Carver's voice cut through her thoughts like a knife. She turned to see him storming toward her, his face red with anger. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. "You left your tables waiting for that guy? He wasn't even a paying customer." "He wasn't feeling well," Melanie explained. "I was just helping him." "Helping?" Carver scoffed. "You're here to work, not play nursemaid. You're fired." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Fired? For what? "For ignoring paying customers and wasting company time," he snapped. "Pack your things and leave." Tears stung Melanie's eyes as the humiliation settled in. Her coworkers avoided her gaze, too scared to speak up. She grabbed her coat and walked out of the diner, her head held high despite the lump in her throat. The cold air bit at her cheeks as she stepped onto the street, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Her son, Jamal, her grandmother, and their bills. How would she take care of everything now? As she trudged home, she clutched the $100 bill tightly, wondering how far it would stretch. Little did she know, her act of kindness had just set something extraordinary into motion. Melanie pushed open the door to the small, 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her grandmother Clara and her 8-year-old son Jamal. The warm, familiar scent of lavender greeted her, a small comfort after the chaos of the day. Clara was dozing on the worn recliner in the corner, her knitting needles resting loosely in her hands. "Mommy!" Jamal ran toward her, his sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floor. His wide grin faded when he noticed her puffy eyes. "What's wrong?" Melanie knelt to his level, brushing his curly hair back from his forehead. "Nothing, baby. Mommy's just tired." Jamal frowned, unconvinced, but nodded. He handed her a crayon drawing. "I made this for you at school. It's us, see?" The picture showed a stick-figure family standing under a bright yellow sun. Jamal, Melanie, and Clara. Above them were the words "We're strong," in wobbly, colorful letters. Melanie hugged him tightly, her chest tightening with emotion. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's perfect." After tucking Jamal into bed, Melanie sat at the tiny kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills piled in front of her. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and Clara's medication costs had skyrocketed this month. Losing her job couldn't have come at a worse time. She sighed and glanced toward Clara, who had woken up and was now watching her with gentle, knowing eyes. "Rough day?" Clara asked, her voice raspy but warm. "That's one way to put it," Melanie replied with a bitter laugh. She recounted the events at the diner, her voice breaking as she got to the part about being fired. Clara listened quietly, her hands folded on her lap. When Melanie finished, she reached out and patted her hand. "You did the right thing, child. Helping someone in need is never wrong." "But now I don't have a job," Melanie whispered. "What am I supposed to do? Jamal needs new shoes. The landlord's already breathing down our necks about the rent." Clara's gaze softened. "You've always found a way before, and you will again. You're stronger than you think." Melanie wanted to believe her grandmother's words, but the weight of responsibility felt suffocating. The next morning, Melanie woke up early to begin her job search. She dressed in her best blouse, faded but neatly pressed, and left a note for Clara, promising to be back by lunch. Austin was bustling as she walked into the first restaurant, a trendy bistro downtown. She spoke to the manager, handing over her resume with a hopeful smile. "We're not hiring," the manager said curtly, barely glancing at the paper. At the next place, a diner similar to Joe's, the manager asked for references. When she mentioned her last job, his expression soured. "I know Carver. If he fired you, there's probably a good reason. Sorry, we can't take a chance." Melanie's heart sank as rejection followed rejection. By mid-afternoon, she sat on a park bench, exhausted and demoralized. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it, choosing to save the last of her money for dinner at home. As she sat there, a group of teenagers nearby were scrolling through their phones, laughing at something. "Yo, isn't this that waitress from the diner?" one of them said, holding up his phone. Melanie's ears perked up and her stomach twisted. "What now?" The teen showed his friends a blurry photo of her from the previous day, handing the mysterious man a glass of orange juice. "It's all over Twitter," another teen said. "People are trying to figure out who that guy is. Some think he's a billionaire or something." Melanie's breath caught in her throat. "A billionaire?" She shook her head. That didn't make sense. The man she helped had been scruffy and unassuming, far from the image of wealth. But the thought nagged at her as she walked home. That evening, after Jamal was asleep, she scrolled through her phone, searching for the photo. It didn't take long to find. The image had gone viral, with thousands of comments speculating about the man's identity. "Looks like Elon Musk," one comment read. "That's not him," another countered. "Why would Elon Musk be at some random diner in Texas?" Melanie stared at the screen, her mind racing. Could it really have been him? And if it was, why had he been there? She put her phone down and leaned back in her chair, a strange mixture of anxiety and curiosity bubbling within her. Something told her this was just the beginning. The next morning, Melanie woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. She squinted at the screen and saw a string of notifications, texts, missed calls, and social media mentions. Her heart sank. "What now?" she mumbled, sitting up and scrolling through her phone. Her name was trending on Twitter. A local news outlet had picked up the viral photo from the diner and written a piece about her act of kindness and subsequent firing. The headline read, "Waitress fired after helping mysterious man." Internet rallies behind her. Melanie's stomach churned as she read the article. The story had painted her as a hero, but also shone a glaring spotlight on her life. They'd even found her old social media profiles, sharing photos of her and Jamal. "What is this?" Clara asked, shuffling into the kitchen with her cane. Melanie handed her the phone, and Clara adjusted her glasses to read the screen. "Well, I'll be," Clara muttered. "You're famous now, huh?" "Not the kind of famous I want," Melanie said. "People are acting like they know me, but they don't." "Fame doesn't pay the bills," Clara said sagely, setting the phone down. Melanie sighed. Exactly. By mid-morning, the situation had escalated. Reporters were calling, asking for interviews. Strangers were sending her messages of support or criticism. Jamal, meanwhile, had overheard kids at school talking about his mom. "Some of them think it's cool," he said when Melanie picked him up that afternoon. "But some were mean. They said you're just trying to get attention." Melanie's chest tightened. "I'm sorry, baby. I didn't ask for any of this." He shrugged, his small face scrunched in thought. "It's okay. I think you're a hero." His words lifted her spirits, but the pressure was mounting. That evening, Melanie received a call from an unfamiliar number. Reluctantly, she answered. "Hello, is this Melanie Brooks?" A smooth male voice asked. "Yes. Who's calling?" "This is Greg Hall from Channel 5 News. We'd like to feature your story in an upcoming segment. It's already gone viral, but we want to give you a chance to tell your side of the story." Melanie hesitated. "I don't know. I'm not sure I want more attention." Greg's tone softened. "I understand, but this could be an opportunity to shed light on what happened at the diner. People want to support you, Melanie." She thought about Clara's medical bills and Jamal's needs. If this attention could lead to opportunities, maybe it was worth it. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." The next day, Melanie sat in her modest living room as the news crew set up. She wore her best blouse and tried to keep her hands from shaking. Greg sat across from her, microphone in hand. "Melanie, tell us about that day at the diner." She recounted the story, her voice steady despite the cameras. She emphasized how helping the man had felt like the right thing to do, even if it had cost her job. When the interview aired later that evening, the response was overwhelming. People flooded social media with messages of support. Donations started pouring in from strangers, some as small as $5, others in the hundreds. But not everyone was kind. Her ex-boss, Mr. Carver, posted on the diner's social media page, calling her unreliable and unprofessional. The post quickly backfired, with hundreds of comments slamming the diner for their treatment of Melanie. Later that night, Melanie scrolled through her phone, her emotions swinging between gratitude and exhaustion. As she was about to set it down, an email caught her eye. It was from someone named Tess Parker. The subject line read, "Message from Elon Musk's team." Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. "Dear Ms. Brooks," the email began. "Mr. Musk has seen your story and would like to meet with you. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to arrange a time. Sincerely, Tess Parker, assistant to Elon Musk." Melanie stared at the screen, her mind racing. Could this really be happening? The world had thrown her life into chaos, but now, it seemed, something extraordinary was just around the corner. Melanie sat frozen at the kitchen table, the glow of her phone casting a pale light on her face. The email from Elon Musk's team felt like a lifeline tossed into the chaos that had consumed her life. "Grandma," she called softly. Clara shuffled into the room, her brow furrowed. "What is it now, child? You look like you've seen a ghost." Melanie turned the phone around to show her. Clara squinted at the screen and read the email slowly. "Elon Musk?" she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "The Tesla man? The rocket man?" "Looks like it," Melanie whispered. Clara leaned back in her chair, her lips pursed in thought. "Well, what are you going to do about it?" Melanie hadn't even considered a response. The idea of meeting someone as influential as Elon Musk seemed unreal. "Do you think it's legit?" Clara gave her a knowing look. "There's only one way to find out." The next day, Melanie replied to the email, cautiously agreeing to the meeting. Within hours, she received a reply with detailed arrangements. A private car would pick her up and take her to a nearby executive airport, where a jet would be waiting to bring her to a location in California. Her stomach churned as she read the itinerary. It felt surreal, like a scene from a movie. But the same thought kept repeating in her mind. What do I have to lose? On the day of the meeting, Melanie hugged Clara and Jamal tightly before stepping into the sleek black car that had arrived at their apartment complex. Jamal looked up at her with wide eyes. "Are you going to be on TV again?" "Probably not, baby," Melanie said with a nervous laugh. "This is something different." Jamal waved enthusiastically as the car pulled away, leaving Melanie alone with her thoughts. The ride to the airport was smooth, and when she arrived, a flight attendant greeted her warmly and guided her onto a private jet. The interior was more luxurious than anything Melanie had ever seen. Polished wood, leather seats, and a quiet hum of air conditioning. As the plane lifted off, she couldn't shake the sense that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Hours later, Melanie found herself in a sleek conference room in a Silicon Valley building that screamed modern innovation. The walls were lined with photos of Tesla cars, SpaceX rockets, and futuristic concepts. A door opened, and Elon Musk walked in, wearing his trademark casual attire, a black t-shirt and jeans. He extended a hand, his expression warm yet curious. "Melanie," he said, "it's great to finally meet you. Thank you for coming." Melanie shook his hand, still trying to process the moment. I wasn't sure if this was real." Elon chuckled. "I get that a lot." He gestured for her to sit at the table. "I heard about what happened at the diner," he said, his tone turning serious. "You didn't have to help me that day, but you did. And I found out what happened afterward. Losing your job over kindness? That's not right." Melanie felt her cheeks flush. "I didn't know it was you. You looked like you needed help." "That's exactly the point," Elon said, leaning forward. "You helped without expecting anything in return. People like you deserve recognition and opportunity." Melanie wasn't sure how to respond. The humility in Elon's voice was disarming. "I want to offer you something," he continued. "A fresh start. Whether it's financial support, a job, or something else, you tell me what you need." The room fell silent as Melanie tried to absorb his words. She thought of Jamal, Clara, and the weight of responsibility she carried every day. "A job," she said finally, her voice steady. "Something stable so I can take care of my family." Elon smiled. "I think we can arrange that." By the time Melanie returned to Austin, she carried more than just a promise. She had a job offer to work as part of the community outreach team for Tesla, helping create programs to support underprivileged families, something she was deeply passionate about. As the car pulled into her apartment complex, Melanie felt a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long while, the future seemed bright. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of an even bigger journey. Melanie stepped out of the car, clutching a sleek black folder containing her offer letter from Tesla. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the apartment complex, and Jamal was already running toward her from the playground, his small sneakers kicking up dust. "Mommy! Mommy! You're back!" he shouted, throwing his arms around her waist. Melanie scooped him up, holding him close. "I missed you, baby." Clara emerged from the apartment, leaning on her cane. "Well, don't keep us in suspense, girl. What happened?" Melanie held up the folder with a grin. "I got a job. And not just any job, a good one." Clara's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Melanie said. "I'll be working for Tesla, helping with their community outreach programs. It's remote, pays well, and they're even offering relocation support if we want to move closer to their offices." Clara clutched her chest dramatically. "Well, I'll be. You've gone and made it big time." Jamal looked up at her with wide eyes. "Does this mean we can get a house with a backyard?" Melanie smiled, her throat tightening. "Maybe, baby. Maybe." That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Melanie explained everything in detail. The salary was more than she'd ever dreamed of earning, and the benefits would cover Clara's medication costs entirely. But what excited her most was the work itself, helping other families in need. "I want to use this opportunity to give back," Melanie said. "Just like someone gave me a chance." Clara nodded approvingly. "You've got a good heart, Melanie. That's why all this came to you in the first place." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Tesla sent a team to help Melanie transition into her new role, setting her up with a home office and training sessions. They also arranged for a financial advisor to help her manage her newfound stability. For the first time in years, Melanie felt like she could breathe. But not everything was smooth sailing. News outlets continued to cover her story, and while most of the attention was positive, a few critics accused her of exploiting her 15 minutes of fame. One morning, as Melanie scrolled through the latest headlines, Clara placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let them talk," Clara said firmly. "You know your truth, and so does the good Lord. That's all that matters." Melanie nodded, trying to let the words sink in. A month into her new job, Tesla invited Melanie to their California headquarters for a community event. It was her first official trip as part of the team, and the event was aimed at supporting single parents with access to childcare and education resources. Standing on stage in front of hundreds of attendees, Melanie shared her story. She spoke about the struggles of raising a child alone, the hardships of making ends meet, and the kindness of strangers that had changed her life. "I never thought a small act of kindness would lead to all this," she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "But it's proof that no matter how small your actions seem, they can create ripples that change lives. I'm standing here today because someone believed in me, and because I believed in myself." The audience erupted in applause, and Melanie felt a swell of pride she hadn't experienced before. After the event, Elon Musk approached her with a smile. "You did great up there," he said. "Thank you," Melanie replied, still buzzing from the energy of the crowd. "I can't thank you enough for this opportunity." Elon shrugged. "You earned it. Besides, it's people like you who remind the world that kindness and resilience matter. Keep paying it forward." As Melanie flew back to Austin, she stared out the window at the clouds below, reflecting on how far she'd come. Life was still full of challenges, but she was no longer defined by fear or uncertainty. She had found her purpose and the strength to keep moving forward. Back in Austin, Melanie's life settled into a new rhythm. Her mornings began early, balancing work calls with getting Jamal ready for school, and her evenings were filled with planning outreach initiatives for Tesla. The once overwhelming pressure of living paycheck to paycheck began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of security. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. One Friday evening, Melanie sat at her dining table, her laptop open, reviewing a presentation for an upcoming community project. Jamal peeked around the corner. "Mommy, can we play now?" Melanie glanced at the clock. "Give me 15 more minutes, okay?" Jamal's face fell. "You said that last time." The guilt hit her like a wave. Balancing her demanding new job with being a present mother was proving harder than she'd anticipated. She closed her laptop with a sigh. "You're right, baby. Let's play." Jamal's face lit up, and he ran to grab his favorite board game. As they played, Clara watched from her chair in the corner. "You're doing fine, Melanie," she said after a while. "It's a learning curve, that's all." Melanie nodded, but doubts lingered in her mind. The next week brought another curveball. Melanie received a call from Tesla's headquarters, asking her to oversee an upcoming initiative in Houston. It would require traveling back and forth several times a month. She hesitated. The opportunity was a big step forward in her career, but it also meant more time away from home. That evening, she sat down with Clara to discuss it. "What do you think, Grandma?" Clara leaned on her cane thoughtfully. "It's a good chance for you, no doubt. But you've got to make sure Jamal doesn't feel left behind. He's proud of you, but he's still a little boy who needs his mama." Melanie nodded, her chest tightening. "I don't want him to feel like I'm choosing work over him." "Then make sure he knows he's your first priority," Clara said simply. "Talk to him about it. He's smarter than you think." That night, Melanie sat on the edge of Jamal's bed. "Hey, buddy, can we talk?" Jamal nodded, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. "I might need to travel for work a little more," Melanie said gently, "but it doesn't mean I love you any less. You're my number one, always." Jamal's face scrunched in thought. "Will you be gone a lot?" "Not too much," Melanie promised. "And I'll always make sure we have time for each other when I'm home." Jamal nodded slowly. "Okay, as long as you still come to my soccer games." Melanie smiled. "Always." With Jamal's blessing, Melanie accepted the Houston assignment. The next few months were a balancing act. She juggled work trips with family time, leaning on Clara for support. In Houston, Melanie thrived. She spearheaded a program that provided electric vehicle charging stations to underserved neighborhoods, ensuring sustainable technology was accessible to everyone. The project received praise from local leaders and even gained attention in national news. But despite her professional success, Melanie remained grounded. On weekends, she and Jamal visited local parks, played board games, and spent hours baking cookies in their tiny kitchen. One Saturday evening, as they finished a batch of cookies, Jamal looked up at her. Mommy, you're like a superhero, he said matter-of-factly. Melanie laughed. Why's that? Because you help people, Jamal said. And you never give up. Tears pricked Melanie's eyes as she hugged him tightly. You're my superhero too, she whispered. As Melanie lay in bed that night, she reflected on how much her life had changed. The journey wasn't easy, but she was learning to navigate the challenges with grace and determination. Her story was still unfolding, and she was ready for whatever came next. The Houston project had been a resounding success, and Melanie's reputation within Tesla's community outreach team was growing. Her confidence soared as she received recognition from colleagues and management alike. But as her professional life blossomed, new challenges began to creep in, threatening the delicate balance she had worked so hard to maintain. One evening, after tucking Jamal into bed, Melanie sat in the living room with Clara. They were watching an old sitcom when Clara muted the TV. You've been looking tired lately, Clara said, her voice laced with concern. Melanie sighed, leaning back on the couch. It's just a lot. I'm trying to do everything, but it feels like I'm always dropping the ball somewhere. Clara nodded knowingly. That's life, child. You've got a lot on your plate. But don't forget, burning yourself out helps no one. Least of all that little boy. Melanie knew Clara was right, but the weight of expectations, both at work and at home, was heavy. The next day, Melanie faced a new challenge at work. During a team meeting, her manager, Lucas, shared feedback from higher-ups about a proposed initiative to expand charging stations to rural areas. It's a great concept, Lucas said, addressing the team, but the execution needs refinement. Melanie, they'd like you to take the lead on reworking the strategy. Melanie's stomach tightened. While she was flattered by the trust placed in her, she was also acutely aware of the pressure it entailed. Later, as the team dispersed, a colleague named Hannah approached her. You're really making waves, Melanie, Hannah said with a smile. But just a word of advice, watch your back. Not everyone in the office is as supportive as they seem. Melanie frowned. What do you mean? Hannah shrugged. Just some whispers. People questioning how you got here so quickly. Melanie felt a pang of unease. She had worked tirelessly to prove herself, but the idea that others doubted her abilities stung. That night, Melanie couldn't sleep. Hannah's words echoed in her mind. She thought about how quickly her life had changed, from a struggling waitress to a professional making a tangible impact. Maybe they're right, she thought. Maybe I don't belong here. The familiar voice of self-doubt crept in, threatening to undo the confidence she had built. The following day, Melanie decided to address her concerns head-on. She scheduled a one-on-one meeting with Lucas to discuss her performance and the expectations surrounding the new project. Lucas, she began nervously, I wanted to touch base about the feedback from the leadership team. I want to make sure I'm meeting expectations and contributing in the best way possible. Lucas leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. Melanie, you're doing excellent work. The leadership team sees your potential. That's why they're giving you these opportunities. Melanie hesitated. I've heard things that maybe some people think I don't deserve to be here. Lucas's expression softened. Unfortunately, success often comes with scrutiny. But let me be clear. You earned your place here. Don't let the noise distract you. His words were reassuring, but Melanie still felt the weight of others' opinions. At home, she sought Clara's wisdom. People will always find reasons to tear you down, Clara said, stirring her tea. You just have to decide whose voices matter. The ones who love you, the ones who support you, or the ones who are too scared to shine their own light. Melanie nodded, taking in her grandmother's advice. In the weeks that followed, Melanie poured her energy into the Rural Charging Station initiative. She consulted with local leaders, organized focus groups, and ensured the project addressed real community needs. When the revised strategy was presented, it received unanimous praise. Melanie felt a swell of pride as Lucas acknowledged her hard work during a company-wide meeting. Later, Hannah approached her again. Looks like you proved the doubters wrong, she said with a grin. Melanie smiled. I wasn't trying to prove them wrong. I was just trying to do my best. That evening, Melanie sat with Jamal as he showed her his latest drawing, a stick figure superhero with curly hair and a cape. Is this me? She asked, laughing. Jamal nodded. You're my hero, Mommy. Melanie hugged him tightly, her heart full. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew she was where she was meant to be. And that was all that mattered. As Melanie's professional and personal lives stabilized, her circle of acquaintances began to widen. Among them was Hannah, the colleague who had warned her about the whispers at Tesla. What started as casual exchanges in the office cafeteria gradually blossomed into a tentative friendship. Hannah was different from Melanie. She was outgoing, quick-witted, and brimming with confidence. At first, Melanie found her intimidating, but over time, she came to appreciate Hannah's sharp sense of humor and knack for navigating workplace politics. One Friday evening, after wrapping up a particularly grueling week, Hannah suggested they grab a drink. "Come on," Hannah urged. "You deserve to unwind, and I know just the place. It's got live music, good food, and no work talk allowed." Melanie hesitated. "I don't know. I don't go out much these days." "All the more reason to come," Hannah said. "Just one drink. You can't say no to that." Later that night, Melanie found herself sitting at a dimly lit bar, nursing a glass of sparkling water while Hannah regaled her with office gossip. "Here's the thing about Lucas," Hannah said, leaning in conspiratorially. "He's great at what he does, but he plays favorites. That's why you need to keep making waves. Stay on his radar." Melanie frowned. "I thought he was fair. He's been really supportive." Hannah shrugged. "Supportive, sure. But the higher you climb, the more people will notice, and not always in a good way." Melanie didn't know how to respond. She appreciated Hannah's candor, but part of her wondered if it was sowing seeds of doubt she didn't need. Over the next few weeks, their friendship deepened. They began meeting for coffee during breaks, exchanging ideas about work projects, and occasionally venting about the challenges they faced. But as much as Melanie enjoyed having someone to confide in, she couldn't shake a lingering sense of caution. One afternoon, while working on a proposal, Melanie received an email from Hannah. Subject: "Just FYI. Body: Heard through the grapevine that upper management is looking at promotions soon. Your name's in the mix. Don't let anyone steal your thunder." Melanie stared at the email, her heart pounding. She hadn't even considered the possibility of a promotion, let alone the implications it might have on her already hectic life. When she confided in Clara that evening, her grandmother's response was measured. "Friendships are good," Clara said, "but always trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is." Melanie decided to focus on her work and let things unfold naturally. But her newfound visibility didn't go unnoticed. During a company meeting, Lucas publicly praised her contributions to the Rural Charging Station initiative, sparking murmurs among her peers. Later, Hannah pulled her aside. "You're killing it," Hannah said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "But remember, success can make people jealous. Watch your back." Melanie nodded, unsure whether Hannah's advice was genuine or self-serving. The tension came to a head a few weeks later. Melanie was presenting a proposal for a new initiative when a senior manager questioned the project's feasibility. Before Melanie could respond, Hannah jumped in. "With all due respect, Melanie's plan is solid," Hannah said smoothly. "But perhaps we could consider scaling it back to address the concerns." Melanie felt her cheeks flush. While Hannah's comment wasn't overtly critical, it undermined her authority in front of the team. After the meeting, Melanie confronted her. "What was that about?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Hannah looked surprised. "What do you mean? I was just trying to help." "It felt more like you were second-guessing me," Melanie said. Hannah sighed. "Melanie, this is how the game is played. You've got to learn to take feedback and roll with it. Not everyone's out to get you." That night, Melanie reflected on the situation. Was she overreacting, or was Hannah's advice a subtle way of asserting control? As she tucked Jamal into bed, his innocent question brought her some clarity. "Mommy, why are grown-ups mean sometimes?" he asked, frowning. Melanie smiled sadly. "Sometimes people don't know how to be kind when they're scared or trying to protect themselves." Jamal thought for a moment. "You should just be kind anyway. That's what superheroes do." Melanie kissed his forehead, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. From that moment, Melanie resolved to trust her instincts. She would remain professional, kind, and focused, but she would also set boundaries. Whether Hannah's intentions were pure or not, Melanie knew she had to navigate her relationships with care. Her journey was her own, and she wasn't going to let anyone steer her off course. Melanie's growing success and visibility at Tesla came with both admiration and scrutiny. The office buzzed with speculation about upcoming promotions, and while she focused on her work, the whispers around her became harder to ignore. One afternoon, Melanie was called into Lucas's office for a meeting. She walked in, clutching her notebook, her mind racing with possibilities. "Take a seat," Lucas said with a warm smile. "I wanted to touch base with you about the mentorship program you proposed. It's an excellent idea, and leadership is impressed. They'd like you to head it up." Melanie's face lit up. "That's amazing. Thank you for the opportunity." Lucas nodded. "You've earned it. Keep up the great work, Melanie. Your dedication is setting you apart." As Melanie left his office, her heart swelled with pride. But her excitement was short-lived. Later that day, she overheard two colleagues talking in the break room. "I don't get it," one said. "Why is she getting all these opportunities? She's barely been here a year." "Connections," the other replied dismissively. "You know she met Musk, right? That probably has something to do with it." Melanie froze, the words stinging more than she expected. She quietly left the room, her confidence shaken. That evening, she confided in Clara over dinner. "They think I haven't earned this," Melanie said, her voice heavy. "That it's all because of that one encounter." Clara set down her fork and looked at her intently. "And why do you care what they think? You know the truth. You've worked hard. Don't let their jealousy dim your light." Melanie nodded, though her grandmother's words did little to ease the ache in her chest. The tension reached a breaking point a few days later. While working on the mentorship program, Melanie discovered that several key details from her proposal had been leaked to another department. She immediately suspected Hannah, who had been privy to the details during their brainstorming sessions. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Melanie confronted her. "Hannah, can we talk?" she said, catching her in the hallway. "Of course," Hannah replied, her smile as bright as ever. "I noticed some of the ideas from my proposal have been circulating in another department," Melanie said carefully. "Did you share them with anyone?" Hannah's smile faltered. "I may have mentioned a few things in passing. I didn't think it was a big deal." Melanie's jaw tightened. "It was a big deal. Those ideas were confidential." Hannah sighed, her tone shifting to defensive. "Melanie, I was just trying to help. Collaboration is how we grow here. Maybe you need to loosen up a bit." Melanie stared at her, feeling a mix of betrayal and disbelief. "You crossed a line, Hannah. Don't let it happen again." That night, Melanie wrestled with her emotions. She had trusted Hannah, but the incident proved that not everyone had her best interests at heart. As she sat at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop, Clara joined her. "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," Clara said, pouring herself a cup of tea. "It's just hard," Melanie admitted. "I don't know who to trust anymore." Clara patted her hand. "Trust yourself, Melanie. And remember, not everyone deserves a seat at your table. You've got to be selective about who you let in." The next morning, Melanie walked into the office with a renewed sense of purpose. She decided to take Clara's advice to heart. From now on, she would focus on her work and let her actions speak for themselves. When Lucas stopped by her desk to commend her on the progress of the mentorship program, Melanie felt a surge of pride. Despite the setbacks and the whispers, she knew she was on the right path. And as for Hannah, Melanie resolved to keep her at arm's length. While their friendship had been a source of support, it was clear that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford to extend lightly. That evening, as she played board games with Jamal, his laughter filled the room, washing away the stress of the day. "You're winning again," Melanie said, feigning exasperation. "That's because I'm the best," Jamal declared, his grin infectious. Melanie laughed, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. No matter what challenges awaited her at work, she had a reason to keep pushing forward, and that reason was sitting right in front of her, beaming with joy. As the days passed, Melanie found herself consumed by the demands of her new role overseeing the mentorship program. Despite the mounting pressure and the lingering doubts in the office, she remained focused, determined to prove herself capable and deserving of the recognition she'd earned. But, As she would soon discover, the battle for respect at work was far from over. One morning, Melanie was sitting at her desk reviewing a report when she was called into Lucas's office again. This time, he didn't seem as cheerful as usual. "Melanie," he began, his tone more serious, "I need to talk to you about something. There's been a shift in the way leadership is viewing the mentorship initiative. They're reconsidering its viability." Melanie's heart sank. She had put so much effort into the program, countless hours meeting with potential mentors and mints, refining the structure, and ensuring it aligned with Tesla's overall goals. "What's the issue?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's not about the idea itself," Lucas said. "It's more about the direction we're taking with it. Some people in upper management feel the focus is too narrow, too centered on community outreach, and not enough on our core business goals." Melanie felt a twinge of frustration. She had always believed that making a positive impact in the community was integral to Tesla's mission, but it seemed like the higher-ups didn't share her vision. "I understand," Melanie said after a pause. "So, what does this mean for the program?" Lucas shifted in his chair. "They want to see more concrete numbers, more tangible business benefits." After the meeting, Melanie sat at her desk, replaying Lucas's words over and over. She couldn't let the mentorship program fall apart, not after everything she had worked for. But with the pressure mounting, she needed support. In the days that followed, Melanie began reaching out to people in the company who might have insight into the internal dynamics. One name kept coming up: James, a senior executive known for his ability to navigate corporate politics. James had a reputation for being blunt, but he was also a strategic thinker with a sharp mind for making things happen at Tesla. One afternoon, after hearing positive feedback about her project, Melanie decided to take a chance. She reached out to James and asked if they could meet for coffee. To her surprise, he agreed. The next morning, they met at a quiet cafe nearby. "I've heard about the work you've been doing, Melanie," James said, his gaze thoughtful. "Your mentorship program is a good idea, but I can see why leadership is hesitant. They're all about numbers, metrics, and the bottom line. You need to show them how this program directly impacts our goals." Melanie felt a spark of hope. "But I'm not sure how to tie it into the company's financials. It's about giving back, about nurturing talent in underserved communities. I believe that's valuable in its own right." James nodded. "I agree with you. But if you can show them that your program brings in qualified candidates who'll eventually help Tesla grow, they'll listen." Melanie thought about it. "You mean, like tracking the success of mints and how they contribute to Tesla's business over time?" "Exactly," James said with a smile. "And if you can link it to Tesla's diversity initiatives, you'll be speaking their language. It's about building a pipeline of talent, and that's something leadership values." Armed with James's advice, Melanie returned to the office with renewed energy. She started working on a new proposal for the mentorship program, emphasizing how it would create a long-term impact on Tesla's bottom line by fostering a more diverse and skilled workforce. In the following weeks, she met with several key people in different departments to gather data and case studies to support her argument. Slowly, the program began to take shape in a way that aligned with the company's financial goals, while still maintaining its original vision of community outreach. One afternoon, Lucas called Melanie into his office. She was prepared for another discussion about the program's future, but this time, the mood was different. "Melanie," Lucas began, "I've reviewed your revised proposal for the mentorship program, and I have to say, I'm impressed. You found a way to tie it to our business objectives while still keeping the community focus intact." Melanie smiled, relieved. "Thank you. I worked hard on it, and I'm glad you think it's moving in the right direction." "More than that," Lucas continued, "I think we can present this to upper management as a model for future initiatives. You've earned their trust." Later that week, Melanie presented her revised proposal to the leadership team. As she spoke, she felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. She had done what many thought was impossible. She had proven that making a positive impact in the community could also contribute to Tesla's success. When she finished, there was a moment of silence in the room. Then, one by one, the executives nodded in agreement. "This is exactly the kind of initiative we need," one of them said. "We'll move forward with it." Melanie couldn't help but smile. She had won them over. That night, as she sat at home with Jamal, She reflected on how far she had come. From a waitress struggling to make ends meet, to a professional leading a groundbreaking initiative at one of the world's most innovative companies. It hadn't been easy, but every challenge, every setback, had brought her one step closer to her ultimate goal. And she knew this was only the beginning. As Melanie settled into her new role, overseeing the mentorship program and securing its future at Tesla, life began to feel more stable. Her hard work had paid off, leadership had approved the revised proposal, and her reputation within the company had never been stronger. But with success came an unexpected price. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Melanie sat at her desk, reviewing final reports for the mentorship program. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the fluorescent lights above. As she clicked through her emails, a new one popped up from Hannah. Subject: we need to talk. Body: Mel, I've been hearing some things that you need to know. There are rumors floating around the office about the mentorship program and about you. I don't know how true they are, but I think you need to be aware. Let's talk tomorrow. Melanie frowned as she read the email. Something about the tone made her uneasy. It was rare for Hannah to reach out in such a cryptic manner. Was this another piece of office gossip, or was there more to it? The next morning, she met Hannah in the coffee room. What's going on? Melanie asked, her voice tinged with concern. Hannah took a deep breath. There are whispers that the only reason your mentorship program is still alive is because of the big names you've been associating with. People think you're getting special treatment because of your connection to Elon Musk. Melanie's stomach dropped. I didn't, she started, but Hannah cut her off. I know you didn't, Mel, Hannah said softly, but that's what people are saying behind your back. They think you're being given opportunities because of him, not because of your skills. Melanie's mind raced. She had heard similar rumors before, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't just idle gossip, it was an attack on her integrity. Do you think it's true? Melanie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hannah hesitated before responding. I don't know, but I think you need to address it before it gets out of hand. People are starting to question your credibility. Later that day, as Melanie sat in her office, she couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. She had worked so hard to prove herself, but now her accomplishments were being overshadowed by the same old assumptions. No one seemed to care about the effort she'd put in, only the association with someone like Elon Musk. That evening, when Melanie got home, Jamal greeted her with a hug, his small arms wrapping around her tightly. The warmth of his embrace was a brief but welcome distraction from the chaos in her mind. Mommy, can we have a movie night? Jamal asked eagerly. Melanie smiled, trying to push the stress aside. Sure, buddy. Let's watch your favorite. As they snuggled on the couch, watching the movie, Melanie's thoughts kept drifting back to the office. What did the rumors mean for her? Would the people at Tesla ever respect her for who she was and what she had accomplished, or would she always be the waitress turned executive in their eyes? The next few weeks were a blur. Despite her best efforts to ignore the gossip, it only seemed to grow louder. Colleagues who had once congratulated her on her success now avoided eye contact or offered half-hearted compliments. The constant whispers in the hallways made Melanie feel as if she were constantly under a microscope. She kept her head down, focusing on her work, but the weight of the rumors was taking its toll. One afternoon, Lucas asked her to stop by his office. Melanie, you've been doing great work, but I need to talk to you about something, he said as she entered. What's wrong? She asked, bracing herself. There have been some concerns raised from upper management about your mentorship program, Lucas said, his tone measured. They're hearing things. People are questioning whether your success is due to your own abilities or your connections. I need to know you're handling this. Melanie's stomach turned. I'm handling it just fine, she said, forcing a calmness she didn't feel. I've worked hard for everything I've earned. Lucas nodded. I know that. But perception is everything. I need you to make sure this doesn't blow up into something bigger. Can you do that? Melanie didn't respond immediately. She felt the familiar sting of frustration rising inside her. It wasn't enough that she had proven herself time and time again. Now she had to fight the perception that she was somehow unqualified. I can handle it, Melanie finally said, though she wasn't sure if she meant it or not. As she left Lucas's office, Melanie's mind raced. She wasn't just battling for her place in the company. She was battling the assumptions and stereotypes that seemed to follow her wherever she went. And worst of all, she didn't know who she could trust anymore. That night, Melanie stayed up late, drafting an email to Lucas. She wanted to address the rumors head-on, to show that she wasn't intimidated by the whispers or the skepticism. She was determined to continue proving her worth, not just for herself but for Jamal. As she typed, she thought back to everything she had overcome. The hardships, the late nights, the constant hustle. It had all led to this point. She wasn't going to let the opinions of others define her future. The next morning, Melanie sent the email to Lucas, detailing her commitment to the mentorship program and her plan to further ensure its alignment with Tesla's goals. She knew it was a risk, but it was a chance she had to take. Later that day, she was surprised to receive a response from James, the senior executive who had helped her refine her approach to the program. Subject: staying ahead. Body: Melanie. I've heard about the challenges you've been facing, and I wanted to offer my support. Don't let the rumors cloud your judgment. You've proven yourself here. I'll stand by you if you need me. Let's grab lunch soon. James. Melanie stared at the email, a mix of gratitude and disbelief flooding her. Perhaps, after all, there were some people at Tesla who still saw her for who she truly was, not just as someone who had risen to success through connections, but as a woman who had fought for every step she took. And with that thought, Melanie knew she wasn't going to back down. The battle was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. Melanie woke up early the next morning with a sense of determination that had been missing for weeks. The weight of the rumors still lingered in her mind, but the support from James gave her the confidence she needed to push through. She had worked hard for every opportunity at Tesla, and she was done allowing anyone to undermine her success. As she arrived at the office, the usual hustle and bustle of the day seemed to have a different energy. People moved quickly, exchanging pleasantries in the hallways, but there was an undercurrent of tension that Melanie couldn't ignore. It was as if everyone knew the rumors were escalating, and no one was willing to openly address them. Melanie headed straight to her office, hoping to bury herself in her work, but before she could even sit down, her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. Subject: meeting request. Body: Melanie. Can you come to my office in 15 minutes? There's something I need to discuss with you. Lucas. A knot formed in Melanie's stomach. She knew it wasn't going to be a simple check-in. She had a feeling that this meeting would be another conversation about the whispers that had been circulating in the office. She took a deep breath, gathering her composure before heading to Lucas's office. As she entered, Lucas motioned for her to sit. Melanie, I need to be upfront with you, Lucas began, his tone serious. There's been a lot of talk about your connection to Elon Musk and how it's impacting perceptions of your leadership. I've spoken to upper management, and while they appreciate the work you're doing, they're concerned that the optics might hurt the program's long-term viability. Melanie clenched her fists, her frustration bubbling up. This conversation felt like déjà vu. Over and over, she was being asked to defend herself for something she had no control over. I've worked hard for everything I've achieved here, she said, her voice steady but firm. I've built relationships based on merit, not just connections. And if they can't see that, then I don't know what more I can do. Lucas leaned forward, his expression softening. I know, Melanie. Believe me, I understand. But at the end of the day, we're all part of a larger company, and sometimes that means making tough decisions. I want to help you, but I need you to understand that this situation is getting harder to ignore. The weight of his words sank in as Melanie walked out of Lucas's office. She had come so far, and yet she felt as though she was constantly fighting against an invisible barrier. It wasn't enough to be competent. She had to prove that she wasn't riding coattails. But how could she continue to battle that perception when it seemed like no matter how hard she worked, the rumors were always there, lurking just beneath the surface? Over the next few days, Melanie threw herself into her work, immersing herself in refining the mentorship program, hoping that the results would speak for themselves. But the tension in the office grew, and her interactions with colleagues became more strained. Everyone knew the stakes were high, but the uncertainty surrounding her position at Tesla hung like a dark cloud. Then, one afternoon, She received an unexpected phone call that would change everything. It was from her old friend from the restaurant, Tony, who had moved across the country to start a new life. "Melanie, how are you doing?" Tony's voice was warm, as always, and hearing it made Melanie's heart swell with nostalgia. "I'm okay, just dealing with some stuff at work." "You know how it goes," Melanie replied, leaning back in her chair. "I heard about the mentorship program," Tony said. "Sounds like you're doing amazing things. But what's this I hear about some people questioning your success?" Melanie sighed. "Yeah, it's frustrating. I feel like I'm constantly having to prove myself just because of, well, everything surrounding Elon and the program. No one seems to care about the work I've put in." "Girl, forget those people," Tony said with a laugh. "I know you, Melanie. You're smarter than all of them. They're just jealous because they can't do what you're doing. Keep pushing, keep showing them who you are. You've got this." Melanie smiled, feeling a small spark of hope ignite inside her. "You're right," she said, her voice stronger now. "I can't let their perception of me control my journey. I've come too far for that." Tony's voice softened. "That's the Melanie I know. You've got this, girl. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The conversation with Tony was the boost Melanie needed. She realized that she had been so focused on fighting for validation within the walls of Tesla that she had forgotten why she was doing this in the first place. It wasn't about proving herself to people who would never see her for who she truly was. It was about creating lasting change and making a difference in the lives of others. The next day, Melanie walked into work with a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer going to let the whispers hold her back. At a meeting later that morning, Melanie stood before the leadership team, ready to present the latest updates on the mentorship program. As she spoke, she felt a sense of confidence she hadn't felt in weeks. "I understand that there have been concerns about the program's direction," she began, her voice steady. "But I want to remind you all that the success of this initiative isn't just about numbers or who I know. It's about the lives we're impacting and the talent we're nurturing. It's about giving people opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise." She could feel the room's energy shift. Some of the executives exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by her boldness. "I've worked tirelessly to make sure this program is aligned with Tesla's goals, and I'll continue to do so. But I also want to make it clear that the heart of this program is about people. We're not just building a workforce, we're building a community." There was a moment of silence, and then James spoke up from the back of the room. "I think Melanie is right," he said. "We need to remember what Tesla stands for. Not just technology, but innovation and inclusion. The mentorship program is an extension of that. It's something we should be proud of." Melanie's heart raced as the room shifted. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen, not just as someone with connections, but as someone with a vision. The conversation that followed was productive. By the end of the meeting, leadership had agreed to allocate additional resources to the mentorship program and had committed to supporting its expansion. Melanie had secured the future of her project, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was truly making a difference. That night, as she sat with Jamal, she felt a quiet sense of victory. Melanie couldn't believe the sense of relief that washed over her as she left the meeting. She had done it. She had turned the tide. The mentorship program had been given the green light for expansion, and the executives were on board. It was a victory that felt hard-won, but it was hers, and it solidified her place at Tesla. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a moment of peace. As she made her way back to her office, her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. She opened it, hoping for confirmation that things were truly moving in the right direction. Subject: a step forward. Body: Melanie, I just wanted to say that I'm impressed with the way you handled that meeting today. Your leadership is clear, and it's evident that your work is making a significant impact. Keep pushing, and we'll make sure the mentorship program reaches its full potential. Lucas. Melanie smiled to herself, her heart swelling with pride. She had taken the advice to heart and had finally proven that her success was not based on connections but on merit. It was an acknowledgement she desperately needed, and it came at the perfect time. But even as she basked in this moment of triumph, she knew that the work wasn't over. This victory was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Melanie's confidence continued to grow. The mentorship program flourished, and more employees came forward to volunteer as mentors. She focused on creating a culture of inclusion and empowerment, working closely with HR to ensure that diverse talent was being supported and developed. The ripple effect of her efforts was becoming clear. Tesla's leadership was noticing the positive changes she was fostering, and the company was starting to see the benefits. Her evenings, once filled with stress and self-doubt, were now spent helping Jamal with his schoolwork and enjoying quiet nights together. They even started a tradition of Friday night movie marathons, something that had become a much-needed break from the hustle and bustle of their lives. Then, one evening, just as Melanie was settling down after a long day, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something told her to pick up. "Hello?" she answered, her voice still carrying the remnants of a long day. "Melanie, this is James from Tesla's executive team," the voice on the other end said. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "No, not at all," she replied, her curiosity piqued. "What's going on?" "I wanted to let you know that we're considering you for a significant leadership position within Tesla," James continued. "We've been following your progress, and we believe you have the vision and the drive to lead a new department that's focused on talent development and diversity initiatives. We'd like to offer you a seat at the table." Melanie felt her heart skip a beat. A leadership position? It was everything she had worked for, but it was also a reminder of how far she had come in such a short time. The offer was more than just a promotion. It was validation of her entire journey. "Wow, I don't even know what to say," she stammered, overwhelmed. "You don't need to say anything yet. We're not rushing you, but we want you to seriously consider the opportunity," James said. "We'll be having a meeting with the rest of the executive team next week, and I'd love for you to join us. Let me know what you think." That night, as she sat on the couch with Jamal, the weight of the decision hit her. This was a huge step, not just in her career, but in her life. It would mean more responsibility, more challenges, but also more opportunities to make an impact on a much larger scale. Jamal looked up at her, sensing her contemplative mood. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Melanie smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Nothing's wrong, buddy. Just thinking about some big decisions." "You always make the right choices," Jamal said with a wisdom that belied his age. Melanie chuckled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I hope so, sweetie. I hope so." The following week, Melanie attended the meeting with Tesla's executive team. It was both exhilarating and intimidating. She had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, but now she was sitting among the very people who had once been so out of reach. As the discussion unfolded, Melanie found herself contributing more and more to the conversation. Her ideas about fostering talent, promoting diversity, and creating sustainable growth were met with genuine interest from the group. When the meeting came to a close, James turned to her with a smile. "You've impressed us, Melanie. We're ready to offer you the position of Vice President of Talent Development and Diversity Initiatives. How do you feel about taking the next step?" Melanie's heart raced as she processed the weight of the offer. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. She would be taking on a larger role, and the expectations would be higher. But there was no hesitation in her answer. "I'm in," she said with confidence, her voice steady. "I'm ready to take on the challenge." The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, planning, and strategizing. Melanie worked tirelessly to prepare for her new role, knowing that she would have a unique opportunity to shape the future of Tesla's workforce. The responsibilities were immense, but Melanie felt more ready than ever. This was the culmination of everything she had worked for, and it was just the beginning. As she sat in her new office for the first time, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From the small-town waitress to the vice president of a major tech company, it was a journey that had pushed her to her limits, but it had also proven to her that anything was possible with hard work, resilience, and the courage to stand up for herself. Later that evening, as Melanie tucked Jamal into bed, he looked up at her with a smile. "Mommy, you're a boss now, right?" Melanie laughed softly, brushing his hair back. "Yes, buddy. I guess you could say that." "I'm proud of you," Jamal said with sincerity, his eyes shining. "I always knew you'd be amazing." Melanie smiled, her heart full. "Thanks, sweetie. I'm proud of you, too." And as she closed the door to his room, she realized that she had finally found her place, not just at Tesla, but in her own life. She had fought for her success, and now she was determined to ensure that others could do the same. Her journey was far from over, but she knew that with every step she took, she was paving the way for a brighter future, not just for herself, but for everyone she was able to help along the way. Melanie's first few weeks as Vice President of Talent Development and Diversity Initiatives were a blur of meetings, presentations, and strategy sessions. It was a role she had long aspired to, but the reality was more overwhelming than she had anticipated. She was thrust into high-level discussions with some of the most influential people in the company, and the pressure to succeed was immense. One of the first initiatives she tackled was creating a framework to support and empower underrepresented groups within Tesla. She had already seen the positive impact of mentorship in her previous role, but now she had the resources and authority to take things to the next level. Her first step was to create a series of workshops and seminars aimed at fostering leadership skills among minority employees. She reached out to experts in leadership, diversity, and inclusion, bringing in speakers from outside the company to offer a fresh perspective. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Employees were excited to see the company investing in their growth and providing them with opportunities to advance. But not everyone was on board. Melanie quickly realized that change, no matter how beneficial, was always met with resistance. Some senior executives were skeptical about her initiatives, questioning whether the resources would be better spent elsewhere. It was clear that some people still viewed diversity and inclusion as a nice-to-have rather than a necessity for the company's success. One afternoon, as she was reviewing feedback from the latest leadership workshop, she received an unexpected call from Elon Musk. Her heart skipped a beat. Elon was known for his hands-off approach to management, but when he did reach out, it was always for something important. "Melanie," Elon's voice came through the line, his tone serious. "I wanted to talk to you about the work you're doing with the talent development program. I've been following it closely, and I have to say, I'm impressed with what you've accomplished so far." Melanie was caught off guard. She had expected to hear from him when things were going well, but the praise still felt surreal. "Thank you, Elon," she replied, trying to keep her composure. "We've been working hard to create programs that not only foster growth but also align with Tesla's vision of innovation and inclusivity." "I agree," Elon said, "but there's something I'd like to discuss. I've been hearing some feedback that your initiatives might be too ambitious for where we are as a company right now. Some executives are concerned about the costs involved, especially with the current economic climate. I don't want you to be discouraged, but I think you need to reassess your approach." The words hit Melanie hard. She had expected to encounter challenges, but to hear that Elon himself was having doubts about her work shook her confidence. Was she pushing too hard? Was she trying to change too much too quickly? These were questions she hadn't considered until now, and they began to gnaw at her. "Understood," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. "I'll reassess and make sure we're aligning with the company's priorities. I appreciate the feedback." As the call ended, Melanie sat back in her chair, trying to process everything. She knew that her vision for Tesla's future was important, but she had to balance it with the company's immediate needs. She couldn't afford to alienate key stakeholders, especially with so much at stake. Later that evening, as she was sitting at home with Jamal, her mind kept circling back to Elon's words. She felt torn between the need to push forward and the reality that she couldn't disregard the concerns of those in power. It wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about finding a way to make her vision work within the confines of the company's larger goals. Jamal interrupted her thoughts when he asked, "Mommy, can we play a game?" Melanie smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Sure, buddy. What game do you want to play?" "Let's play chess," he said with enthusiasm. Melanie laughed. "You're getting pretty good at chess for someone your age." Jamal shrugged. "I'm just trying to be as smart as you, Mommy. You always make the right moves." Her heart swelled with pride at his words. The weight of the day seemed to lift for a moment, and she realized that, no matter what, she had someone who believed in her unconditionally. That was worth more than any position or title. The next morning, Melanie decided to meet with her team to recalibrate her approach. She wasn't going to back down, but she needed to find a way to show the value of her initiatives in a way that aligned with Tesla's immediate goals. The first thing she did was to conduct a series of one-on-one meetings with key executives to get their perspectives on her programs. It quickly became clear that many of them were not opposed to the idea of diversity and inclusion. They just wanted to see a clear ROI, return on investment. They wanted to understand how these programs would directly contribute to Tesla's bottom line and overall success. Melanie took the feedback in stride and began to work on a new proposal, one that would demonstrate how fostering talent from diverse backgrounds would not only create a more inclusive environment but also lead to higher retention rates, greater innovation, and a stronger company culture. Days later, Melanie presented her revised proposal to the executive team. She focused on the long-term benefits of diversity, not just as a moral imperative, but as a strategic advantage. She highlighted studies that showed how companies with diverse teams were more innovative and had higher employee satisfaction. She also provided detailed plans for tracking the success of the programs, ensuring that the company would see measurable results. The room was silent as the team absorbed her presentation. Finally, Lucas spoke up. "I think this is the approach we needed to see. It's clear that you've put a lot of thought into this, Melanie. We'll take this to Elon and get his feedback." Melanie felt a flicker of hope. She had done what she could to make her case, but now it was out of her hands. She just had to wait and see if her vision would be embraced, or if she would have to make even more adjustments. Later that week, Elon called again. This time, his tone was more thoughtful. "Melanie, I've had a chance to review your revised proposal," he said. "I have to admit, I wasn't fully convinced before, but I see now how this could benefit Tesla in the long run. Let's move forward with this approach." Melanie couldn't believe it. She had done it. Her vision for talent development and diversity had been accepted, and Tesla was ready to make the commitment. As she hung up the phone, a rush of emotions hit her. She had overcome the doubts and challenges, and now she was about to make a lasting impact on Tesla's future. But beyond the corporate success, Melanie realized that the most important part of her journey wasn't the title or the praise. It was the fact that she had stayed true to her values and her vision, no matter how difficult the path had been. As she sat back in her chair, she knew that this was just the beginning. She was ready for whatever challenge came next, because she had proven to herself, and to everyone else, that she was capable of more than anyone had ever imagined. The weeks that followed were filled with excitement, anticipation, and a renewed sense of purpose. Melanie had successfully gained the backing of the executives for her diversity and talent development programs, and Tesla was about to embark on a new chapter. With Elon Musk's support, she felt a tremendous sense of accomplishment, but she also knew that the real work was just beginning. Her team was in full swing, and Melanie poured herself into ensuring every part of her plan was executed with precision. She coordinated workshops, mentorship programs, and employee resource groups, all aimed at building an inclusive, innovative environment where talent could thrive, no matter their background. It was exhilarating to see her vision come to life, but it was also draining. The weight of responsibility rested squarely on her shoulders. One evening, while sifting through reports and trying to organize her next steps, Melanie received a text from Jamal's school. The message was brief but concerning. "Jamal's teacher would like to meet with you. There's been an issue we need to address." Her heart sank. Jamal had always been a bright, happy child, but recently she had noticed a shift. He seemed quieter, more withdrawn, and she had a nagging feeling that something was off. The next morning, Melanie arrived at Jamal's school early for the meeting. She was greeted by Mrs. Parker, Jamal's teacher, a woman who had always been kind and supportive. However, today there was a somber tone to her greeting. "Melanie, thank you for coming in. I'm afraid we've had some concerns regarding Jamal's behavior recently," Mrs. Parker began. Melanie sat down, her mind racing. "What kind of concerns?" she asked, her voice tight. Mrs. Parker hesitated before continuing. "It's not about his academic performance, which has been excellent as usual. It's more about his interactions with the other children. He's become increasingly isolated, and we've noticed that he seems to be avoiding group activities. He's also been more sensitive than usual, which isn't like him." Melanie's heart tightened. She had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it confirmed made her stomach turn. "Do you know why? Is something happening at school that I'm unaware of?" We're not sure, Mrs. Parker said gently, but it's possible that some of the other children are making comments about his mom's work. There have been whispers, and he might be feeling different or even ashamed of your success. Melanie sat back, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. How could something like this happen? She had worked so hard to create a better life for Jamal, and now, in the very place she had trusted, he was feeling the weight of her success in a way she hadn't anticipated. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Melanie said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "I'll talk to him, and we'll figure this out." That night, when Jamal came home, Melanie sat down with him. She had planned to talk to him about his day at school, but she needed to approach this carefully. She didn't want to make him feel like he was being blamed for something that was out of his control. "Jamal," she began gently, "I heard from your teacher today that you've been having a tough time at school. Do you want to talk about it?" Jamal shifted uncomfortably, looking down at his hands. "I don't want to talk about it, Mommy. It's nothing." Melanie reached out, lifting his chin so their eyes met. "Sweetie, you don't have to carry it alone. If something's bothering you, I'm here to listen. Always." For a long moment, Jamal stayed silent, his little brow furrowed. Then, finally, his voice came out in a whisper. "The kids at school, they talk about you. They say you're a big boss now, and sometimes they make fun of me for it. I don't want them to think I'm different." Melanie's heart shattered. She never imagined that Jamal would be the one to bear the brunt of her success. She pulled him into her arms, kissing the top of his head. "Oh, baby, you're never different in a bad way. You're special just the way you are, and nothing about what I do will ever change that. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Jamal sniffled, wiping his eyes. "But they laugh at me, Mommy, and I don't know how to stop them." Melanie sighed, holding him tighter. "People can be unkind sometimes, Jamal, but that doesn't define who you are. You are brave, strong, and kind. If anyone says anything mean, you can come to me, and we'll handle it together. You're not alone." Jamal nodded, though his uncertainty remained. Over the next few weeks, Melanie worked hard to rebuild Jamal's confidence. She talked to his teachers, ensuring they were aware of what was happening and offering additional support. She also made an effort to have more one-on-one time with him, focusing on their bond and reassuring him that he wasn't defined by what others said. But the experience weighed heavily on Melanie. She had come to realize that while she had built a successful career, it was still a constant challenge to balance her professional life with being a mother. She couldn't protect Jamal from everything, and the thought of him being hurt because of her success felt like an unspoken betrayal. As the weeks passed, Melanie's efforts to support Jamal started to pay off. Slowly, he began to regain his confidence. His grades remained strong, and his behavior at school improved. The teasing diminished, and with it, Jamal's uncertainty. Still, Melanie couldn't ignore the nagging sense of guilt. She had accomplished so much, but it had come at a cost. Her role at Tesla had demanded so much of her, and it had unintentionally created a ripple effect in Jamal's life. She had spent so many years proving herself to others, to the executives at Tesla, and even to herself. But the most important lesson she had learned through all of this was that her greatest achievement was not her position or her success at work. It was the love and security she could provide for Jamal. No amount of corporate accolades could compare to that. One evening, as Melanie and Jamal sat together watching a movie, Jamal turned to her with a small smile. "Mommy, I'm glad you're a boss," he said softly, "but I'm even more glad that you're my mom." Tears welled up in Melanie's eyes as she pulled him close. "And I'm glad I'm your mom, Jamal. You make everything worth it." As the days continued to unfold, Melanie realized that she had reached a critical turning point. Success was important, but it wasn't everything. Her true victory wasn't in the recognition she received at work. It was in the small, meaningful moments with Jamal, those moments when she knew she had made a real difference in his life. She had climbed the corporate ladder and reached new heights, but the most important thing she had ever done was protect and nurture the one person who mattered most, her son. And in that, she found a peace that no amount of professional success could ever replace. Melanie had finally found a balance between her work at Tesla and being a mother to Jamal. The past few months had been a whirlwind of personal and professional growth, and while there were still challenges ahead, She had learned to navigate them with resilience and grace. But life, as she knew, was rarely straightforward. One afternoon, she received an unexpected email from the executive team. It was an invitation to a high-level leadership summit, a gathering of Tesla's most influential leaders, key investors, and external partners. The event was being held in the heart of Silicon Valley, and it was an opportunity for leaders to discuss the company's future, its direction in the market, and new, groundbreaking projects. The email stated that Elon Musk himself would be attending the summit, as well as several key investors who held significant influence over Tesla's decisions. For Melanie, this was an opportunity to showcase everything she had worked for: the talent programs, the diversity initiatives, and the incredible strides Tesla had made toward a more inclusive and innovative workplace. But the pressure of this event was unlike anything she had ever experienced. She had already faced the challenges of gaining the support of key executives, but this was an entirely different level of scrutiny. If she failed, it could jeopardize everything she had worked for. She wasn't just representing her programs anymore. She was representing herself, her family, and the future she had fought so hard to build. As the summit approached, Melanie found herself working around the clock. She crafted the perfect presentation, one that highlighted not only the financial benefits of her diversity initiatives, but also the tangible results Tesla had already seen: improved employee engagement, higher retention rates, and a more dynamic, innovative work culture. Every slide, every statistic, every word needed to land perfectly. At the same time, she made sure to maintain her connection with Jamal. She didn't want him to feel neglected, especially after everything he had been through. They spent more time together in the evenings, even if it was just playing a simple board game or watching a show on TV. "Mom, you're going to do great at the summit, right?" Jamal asked one night as they sat together on the couch. Melanie smiled, pulling him closer. "I hope so, buddy. I'm going to give it my best shot, for you and for all the people at Tesla who believe in me." "You always do your best," he said with a reassuring smile. "That's why I'm proud of you." Her heart swelled with pride. No matter how challenging the journey had been, moments like this made it all worth it. She wasn't just working for a title or a promotion. She was working to create a future where Jamal could thrive in a world that might one day be even better than the one she had known. The day of the summit arrived, and Melanie was more nervous than she had ever been. She arrived at the venue, a sleek, modern conference center with panoramic views of the Silicon Valley skyline. The room was filled with some of the most influential people in the world, and she couldn't help but feel a wave of imposter syndrome wash over her. The expectations were high, and all eyes would be on her. After a few hours of networking and introductory speeches, the time for presentations finally arrived. Melanie took her place at the front of the room, her heart racing. She glanced over the audience. Elon Musk was seated in the front row, his usual intensity making her pulse quicken. Surrounding him were investors, executives, and a few media personnel, all waiting to hear what she had to say. She began her presentation with a story, something personal to her experience. "When I started at Tesla," she said, "I was just like many of the employees I work with today. I didn't come from privilege. I didn't have a safety net, but I had ambition. I wanted to make a difference, not just for myself, but for the people around me. And I realized something. Diversity isn't just about representation. It's about creating an environment where everyone, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to contribute and lead." As she spoke, she could see some of the executives nodding along, the words resonating with them. Melanie continued, explaining the tangible benefits of diversity, the clear financial and cultural impacts it had on Tesla. She shared data, employee testimonials, and success stories, painting a picture of a company that was not just growing in revenue but in humanity. But as she neared the climax of her presentation, she noticed a shift in the room. Elon's gaze seemed fixed on her, almost assessing, as though he was waiting for her to make a mistake. A sense of unease crept up her spine, but she pushed it aside. This was her moment, and she was determined to make the most of it. Then, just as Melanie was about to finish, an unexpected interruption came from one of the investors, a man named Gregory Wells, known for his blunt and often critical demeanor. "Melanie," he said, raising his hand, "I understand the argument you're making, but I have to ask, How do you justify the cost of these initiatives when we're facing a tough financial quarter? Tesla's profitability is at stake here. Can you provide us with concrete evidence that these diversity programs will directly lead to a more profitable company in the short term? The room fell silent. Melanie felt a surge of anxiety, but she didn't let it show. This was the moment she had been dreading, the point where everything could fall apart. She took a deep breath. Gregory, I understand your concerns, and I want to be clear. I'm not asking you to support these initiatives out of goodwill alone. The fact is, companies that invest in diversity see a return. Studies have shown that diverse teams are more innovative, solve problems faster, and are better equipped to handle the complexities of today's global market. In Tesla's case, we've already seen the benefits. Our retention rates have improved, our employee engagement is at an all-time high, and we're attracting top talent from around the world. These aren't just feel-good statistics, they're driving our success. Melanie paused for a moment, letting her words sink in before continuing. Tesla is built on innovation, on thinking outside the box, and on pushing boundaries. Diversity isn't just a moral imperative, it's a competitive advantage. And in a rapidly changing market, that's something we can't afford to overlook. For a moment, the room was quiet. Then, Elon Musk spoke up, his voice cutting through the tension. I think Melanie makes a good point. Tesla's success isn't just about the cars we make. It's about the people who make them. And if we want to stay ahead, we need to be the leaders not just in technology, but in creating the kind of culture that brings out the best in everyone. Elon's support, though subtle, was all it took. The tension in the room lifted, and the atmosphere shifted. Gregory Wells, though still skeptical, nodded slightly. Melanie had done it. She had proven her case. As the summit came to a close, Melanie felt a rush of relief. She had survived the toughest test of her career so far. Not only had she delivered a compelling argument, but she had also earned the respect of those who had doubted her. Later that evening, as she sat in her hotel room, reflecting on everything that had happened, she smiled. She had faced obstacles, made sacrifices, and overcome challenges she had never imagined. But in the end, she had triumphed, not just for herself, but for everyone who had believed in her. And most importantly, for Jamal. As she drifted off to sleep, Melanie knew that her journey was far from over. The road ahead would be filled with new tests, new challenges, and new victories. But she was ready, because no matter what came next, she was determined to keep moving forward, with the same passion, determination, and love that had gotten her this far. After the summit, the days that followed felt like a blur. Melanie's success at the conference had not only solidified her place as a leader at Tesla, but it had also reinforced her belief in her own abilities. But despite the triumphs, a part of her still felt like she was standing on a precipice. The summit had been a defining moment, but she knew that there was more to accomplish. It wasn't just about corporate success, it was about making a lasting impact. As Melanie sat in her office, reviewing the feedback from the summit, she received a call from her mother. It was the first time in weeks they had spoken on the phone, and Melanie was grateful for the opportunity to catch up. "Hey, Mom," Melanie greeted with a smile, leaning back in her chair. "How are you doing?" "I'm doing well, baby. I've been thinking about you a lot lately," her mother replied. "I know things have been busy with work, but you're doing incredible things. I'm proud of you." Melanie's heart warmed at her mother's words. "Thanks, Mom. It means a lot to hear that, especially from you. You've come so far, and I know this is just the beginning," her mother continued. "But don't forget about yourself. Don't forget to take care of your heart. You've been through a lot, and you need to make sure you're okay too." Melanie felt a lump form in her throat. "I know, Mom. It's just hard sometimes. I feel like I'm always running. I don't want to let anyone down, especially Jamal." Her mother's voice softened. "Sweetheart, you're doing the best you can, and that's all anyone can ask. You're a strong woman, but you don't have to do it all on your own. Let people help you when you need it. And don't forget, you have a family who loves you." The conversation with her mother had a profound effect on Melanie. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to pause and reflect. She had been so focused on proving herself, on building her career, that she had neglected the parts of her life that truly mattered. her emotional well-being, and the relationships that kept her grounded. That evening, as she sat on the couch with Jamal, she realized that it wasn't just about career achievements or external validation. What truly mattered were the connections she shared with the people she loved, the family that had always supported her, the friends who had lifted her up, and Jamal, whose love had always been her greatest source of strength. "Jamal, I've been thinking," Melanie said, her voice thoughtful. "I know I've been busy with work lately, but I want to spend more time with you. Just the two of us, no distractions. How about a weekend getaway? Just you, me, and a little adventure." Jamal's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "Really? Just us? That sounds awesome, Mom." The following weekend, Melanie and Jamal packed their bags and headed out for a weekend trip to a small cabin in the mountains. The place was peaceful, tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the world, and it was the perfect place to unwind. For the first time in a long while, Melanie was able to fully disconnect from work and focus solely on her son. They spent the weekend hiking, cooking meals together, and enjoying the tranquility of nature. The days were filled with laughter, deep conversations, and moments of pure joy. It was the reset Melanie had desperately needed, a reminder that there was more to life than the daily grind. On their last day, as they sat by the fire, Jamal looked up at her with a serious expression. "Mom, I've been thinking," he said, his voice quiet. "I know you've been working really hard, and I'm proud of you. But I also want you to know that I love you, and I'm okay. You don't have to do everything alone." Melanie's heart swelled with emotion. "I love you too, Jamal. You're the most important thing in my life. Everything I do for you." Jamal smiled. "I know, and I'm proud of you. But you don't have to carry all the weight on your own. We're in this together." That conversation stayed with Melanie long after they returned home. Jamal's words were a reminder that, while success was important, it wasn't everything. It was the moments of connection, of love, and of being present in the lives of those you cared about that made life truly meaningful. As the weeks passed, Melanie found herself embracing a new sense of balance. She continued to thrive at Tesla, working on new initiatives and pushing the company forward, but she also made space for the things that mattered most: time with Jamal, moments of self-care, and nurturing her personal relationships. She began to see that it wasn't about choosing between her career and her family. It was about finding harmony between the two. And with each passing day, she became more confident in her ability to do both, excel at work while being a loving and present mother. Then, one day, Melanie received an unexpected call. It was from Elon Musk. "Melanie," he began, his tone serious, "I wanted to personally reach out and tell you how impressed I've been with the progress you've made at Tesla. Your initiatives have had a significant impact, not just on the company, but on the people here. I've seen a noticeable change in the culture, and it's all thanks to your hard work." Melanie felt a rush of pride, but also a sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Elon. That means a lot coming from you." Elon continued, "I want to offer you a new role at Tesla. We're looking to expand our leadership team and take these initiatives to the next level. I believe you're the right person for the job." Melanie's mind raced. This was the moment she had worked for, but something inside her hesitated. She had already achieved so much. Did she want more? Or was it time to focus on the life she had outside of her career? "Let me think about it," she said after a moment. "I'll give you my decision soon." As she hung up the phone, Melanie sat in silence, contemplating the offer. She had worked tirelessly to reach this point in her career, and this new role was a culmination of everything she had hoped for. But at the same time, she realized that the most important thing in her life wasn't the title or the promotion. It was the balance, the love, and the happiness she had found with Jamal. After taking some time to reflect, Melanie made her decision. She would continue working at Tesla, but on her own terms. She would take on the new role, but only if it allowed her to maintain the balance she had worked so hard to achieve. She would no longer allow herself to lose sight of what truly mattered. When Melanie called Elon to accept the offer, she felt a sense of clarity and peace she had never known before. She was ready for the next chapter, one that would allow her to thrive both professionally and personally. And as she looked at Jamal, smiling up at her from across the room, she knew that no matter what happened next, she had already achieved everything that truly mattered. In the end, Melanie had discovered that success wasn't defined by the accolades or the titles. It was defined by the choices we make and the people we love. And as long as she had that, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The decision was made. Melanie had accepted the new leadership role at Tesla, but with a clear vision for her future. She wasn't going to sacrifice her personal life or her relationship with Jamal for the sake of her career. Instead, she would carve out a path that allowed her to excel at both, an ambitious professional and a devoted mother. It was a balance, and she was ready to embrace it fully. Her first day in the new role was a whirlwind. She was introduced to new projects, new teams, and new responsibilities. Her calendar was packed with meetings, presentations, and strategic planning sessions. But as the day wore on, Melanie realized that she had never felt more alive. This was her time to shine, and she was determined to make the most of it. Yet, despite the new challenges, she remained grounded. Each day, she made sure to set aside time for Jamal. She would pick him up from school, take him to basketball practice, or just sit down with him to talk about his day. She found that these moments were the ones that truly kept her connected to her purpose. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Melanie was on the phone with Jamal, who was at home, excitedly telling her about his school project. "Mom, guess what? I got the highest grade in class on my history project. Mrs. Turner said it was the best in the class." Jamal's voice was full of pride. Melanie's heart swelled with joy. "That's amazing, Jamal. I'm so proud of you. What was the project about?" "It was about the civil rights movement," he said enthusiastically. "I talked about how people like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. changed history. I even made a poster with pictures and facts. It took a lot of work, but I really liked doing it." "Well, sounds like you're following in some pretty great footsteps," Melanie replied, her voice filled with admiration. "I'm proud of you, buddy. You're going to do great things." The next few weeks passed by in a blur. Melanie dove deep into her new role, overseeing the expansion of Tesla's diversity programs and working closely with senior leadership to further the company's vision of inclusivity and innovation. Her hard work began to pay off, as Tesla saw increased employee satisfaction and a noticeable shift in company culture. But Melanie knew that her success wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the people she was empowering, the community she was uplifting, and the future she was helping to shape. One afternoon, Melanie received an invitation from the executive team to attend a global tech conference in Europe. It was an opportunity to speak on a panel about diversity in tech, and the invitation was a recognition of her groundbreaking work at Tesla. At first, Melanie hesitated. The timing wasn't ideal. She had just started her new role, and Jamal was in the middle of an important school term. But after a heartfelt conversation with him, Jamal encouraged her to go. "Mom, I know this is important to you," he said thoughtfully, "and it'll be cool for you to see other people doing the same kind of work. Plus, I'll be okay. You've already taught me so much about being strong and doing what's right. You should go and represent us." Melanie was touched by his maturity and support. "Thank you, Jamal. You make me proud every day. I'll make sure to call you as soon as I get there." As the plane touched down in Europe, Melanie felt a sense of excitement and nervousness. This conference was one of the biggest events of her career, and she was about to speak to an audience of thousands of people from all over the world. It was a moment she had worked for, but it was also a chance to continue advocating for the things that mattered most to her. The conference was held in a grand convention center, filled with leaders in the tech industry, innovators, and activists from all walks of life. Melanie's panel was scheduled for the afternoon, and as the time approached, she felt the familiar nerves creeping in. But this time, she didn't let them overpower her. Instead, she took a deep breath and reminded herself of the bigger picture. The change she was trying to create, the voices she was amplifying, and the future she was fighting for. When she took the stage, the room fell silent. She looked out into the audience and saw faces of all ages, races, and backgrounds, all listening intently. Melanie felt a sense of purpose surge through her. She was there to share her story, to show the world that diversity was not just a buzzword. It was a powerful catalyst for change. She began her speech by telling her own story, how she had come from humble beginnings, how she had faced challenges, and how her journey had led her to Tesla. She spoke about the importance of creating workplaces where everyone could thrive, where diversity wasn't just about meeting quotas, but about enriching the workplace with varied perspectives and experiences. Change doesn't happen overnight, Melanie said, her voice confident and clear, but each step forward, no matter how small, creates a ripple that leads to something much bigger. We're not just shaping companies, we're shaping the future. The crowd erupted into applause as she finished, and for a brief moment, Melanie felt like everything she had worked for had come full circle. This was the impact she had always hoped for, and it was just the beginning. When she returned home, Melanie was greeted by a very excited Jamal. "Mom, you're back. How was the conference?" "It was amazing, Jamal," she said, kneeling down to hug him. "I spoke to so many incredible people, and I got to share our story with the world. I'm proud of everything we've accomplished, and I want you to know that you were a big part of that." Jamal grinned. "I knew it. You're making the world better for everyone." "Together, we are," Melanie replied. "We're both part of something bigger than ourselves." As the weeks went on, Melanie continued to excel in her role at Tesla, but she also took every opportunity to be there for Jamal, to be present in his life, and to continue shaping the future they both dreamed of. She had found the balance she had been striving for, and it was more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. With each passing day, Melanie realized that she didn't need to choose between her career and her family. She could have both, a career that fulfilled her and a family that supported and inspired her. And as she looked to the future, she knew that no matter where life took her, she would always have the strength, love, and resilience to face whatever came next. Together, Melanie and Jamal were ready to take on the world, one step at a time, side by side. Life seemed to be in perfect alignment for Melanie. Her career at Tesla continued to soar as she navigated her leadership role with finesse. At home, her bond with Jamal had deepened, and she could sense that both of them were growing into a new chapter in their lives. Melanie no longer felt the pressure to choose between her professional ambitions and her personal life. Instead, she was learning how to thrive in both realms. Yet, as the weeks turned into months, Melanie began to think more about her legacy. She had worked tirelessly to reach this point, but what would she leave behind? Was it enough to simply achieve success in the present, or was there something more profound that she needed to contribute to the world? One night, after a particularly rewarding day at work, Melanie sat down with Jamal at the dinner table. He had just returned from his basketball practice, and there was a sparkle in his eyes. "Mom, guess what? I made the varsity team," he exclaimed, his voice full of pride. Melanie beamed. "That's incredible, Jamal. I knew you had it in you." Jamal sat down with a grin, but then his expression softened. "You know, Mom, I've been thinking, you've worked so hard to get where you are. You're really changing the world. But I also know that I have to keep pushing forward too, right? I want to be someone who does big things like you. I want to help people and make a difference." Melanie paused, her heart swelling with love. "Jamal, you already are making a difference. By being kind, by working hard, by dreaming big, you're already on the path. You don't have to wait for the big moment to make an impact." Jamal nodded thoughtfully, then added, "I want to keep pushing myself, but I also want to help you with your work. I want to be there, learn from you." Melanie smiled, feeling the full weight of her son's words. "And you will be. I'm so proud of the young man you're becoming. You're already teaching me so much about what it means to be present and to push for greatness. We'll do it together." As time went on, Melanie began to take on more community-focused projects, something she had always felt passionate about but never had the time to fully pursue. She started organizing mentorship programs for young women in tech, particularly for those from underrepresented communities. She wanted to create a platform that would empower the next generation of leaders, the next generation of people who would rise up and change the world. She also began to engage with local schools, giving speeches and offering advice to students about how they could succeed in a rapidly changing world. She emphasized the importance of education, resilience, and finding one's passion. These moments filled her with a sense of purpose, reminding her of the importance of giving back and creating opportunities for others. One afternoon, as Melanie was preparing for an important speech at a local school, she received a call from Elon Musk. He was on a tight schedule, but Melanie had come to know his voice well over the years. "Melanie," Elon said, his tone serious but supportive. "I've been watching the work you've been doing, and I have to say, it's impressive. The way you're pushing forward with your diversity initiatives and community outreach, it's inspiring. We need more people like you to be the face of Tesla. Leaders who understand that innovation isn't just about technology, it's about people." Melanie was taken aback by his words. "Thank you, Elon. That means a lot coming from you. I want to offer you an even greater platform," Elon continued. "I'm starting a new initiative, something that goes beyond Tesla. It's about creating sustainable communities, not just through technology, but through education, mentorship, and access to opportunities. I want you to be a part of this. You've been building something incredible, and I believe we can take it to the next level together." Melanie's mind raced as she processed what Elon was proposing. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, one that could take her passion for diversity and mentorship to new heights. But at the same time, she felt a tug at her heart. She didn't want to lose sight of the personal connections that had become so meaningful to her. After a long pause, Melanie spoke with resolve. "I'm honored, Elon. I believe in what you're proposing, and I want to be a part of it. But I also need to ensure that it aligns with my values, especially when it comes to my family. I want to make sure that I'm not sacrificing the things that matter most to me." Elon's response was encouraging. "Take the time you need, Melanie. You've earned the right to make that decision on your terms." That evening, Melanie sat in her living room, reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few years. She had come so far, and yet, she knew that her journey was far from over. She had the chance to change the world, not just through her work at Tesla, but through the impact she was making on the lives of those around her. As Jamal came home from basketball practice, she looked at him with new clarity. She wasn't just working to leave behind a legacy of business success. She was working to leave behind a legacy of love, purpose, and empowerment for the people she cared about most. "Mom, what's up?" Jamal asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I was just thinking," Melanie began, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "We don't just build things in our careers or our companies. We build people. We build communities. And that's the real legacy." Jamal smiled, his eyes reflecting understanding. "I get it, and I want to help you build that. We can do this together." The following weeks were filled with thoughtful planning and conversations. Melanie and Elon continued their discussions about the new initiative, and she eventually agreed to join the project, on her terms. The initiative would focus on creating educational programs, mentorship opportunities, and sustainable technologies that would benefit underserved communities around the world. With her son by her side, Melanie felt more confident than ever. She wasn't just following a career path. She was creating a path that would help others find their way. It was a new chapter, but it felt like the culmination of everything she had worked for. In the end, Melanie realized that her legacy wasn't just about the titles or the accolades. It was about the impact she had on others, the lives she touched, the communities she uplifted, and the future she shaped for Jamal and the next generation. And as long as she continued to live with purpose and passion, she knew that her legacy would continue to grow, long after her career at Tesla had ended. And so, with her heart full and her mind focused on the future, Melanie moved forward, into a new chapter of life, ready to build the legacy she had always dreamed of, with her family and her community by her side. Melanie's life had changed drastically in just a few months. From a fired waitress to a global leader advocating for change, her journey had been one of unexpected twists, immense growth, and unwavering resilience. But as her new initiative with Elon Musk began to take shape, she realized there was one final piece of the puzzle left to complete: her own sense of peace. Success, power, and legacy were important, but she hadn't yet found the balance that allowed her to truly feel content in every aspect of her life. The new project was gaining momentum, and it was growing bigger than Melanie had ever imagined. She was now part of a global team that was working not only on Tesla's sustainability, but also on large-scale educational initiatives aimed at underserved communities. The vision was clear: transform education through access to technology, mentorship, and real-world skills that could empower a generation. But with every success came more challenges. One afternoon, After a long day filled with meetings and planning sessions, Melanie found herself sitting alone in her office, reflecting on how far she had come. Her phone buzzed on the desk, and she smiled as she saw Jamal's name on the screen. "Hey, buddy," she said as she answered the call. "Hey, Mom." Jamal's voice was full of excitement. "Guess what? I was selected to be the captain of the basketball team, and I'm so proud of the project I've been working on at school about renewable energy. I know you've been working on that with your new team, and I thought I'd try something like it too." Melanie's heart swelled with pride. "That's amazing, Jamal. I'm so proud of you. You're already doing things that can change the world, just like me." There was a pause, and then Jamal said, his voice softer, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we're building people and communities. I want to make sure that when I'm older, I'm helping people the way you are. I want to be part of something big." Melanie felt tears prick at her eyes. "Jamal, you're already on that path. The fact that you're thinking about these things at your age, I can't tell you how much that means to me. I'm so proud of the man you're becoming, and we're going to do this together." As the weeks passed, Melanie found herself grappling with a deeper, more personal question. Was she truly fulfilled in her career, or was she simply caught up in the whirlwind of success and expectations? It had been years since she had thought about her own happiness in this way. Yes, she loved her work, but she had started to feel a yearning for something more, something outside the scope of titles, meetings, and projects. She spoke to Jamal about it one evening after dinner. They sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Jamal had just finished his homework, and the air was crisp, signaling the change of seasons. "Mom, are you okay?" Jamal asked, sensing the heaviness in her voice. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Melanie said slowly. "I've worked so hard to get to where I am, and I've been doing everything I can to make the world a better place. But sometimes I wonder if I've been so focused on making an impact that I've forgotten to enjoy the small moments, the moments that really matter." Jamal listened intently, his young eyes wise beyond his years. "You mean like us sitting here right now?" "Exactly," Melanie replied. "Sometimes, I think we forget how important these moments are. Work is important, but so is family, friendship, and finding joy in the everyday things." Jamal smiled, placing his hand on hers. "Well, I think you're doing great, Mom. You're showing me every day what it means to work hard and care about people. And that's something I'll never forget." With Jamal's encouragement, Melanie decided to step back for a moment and reassess her life. She knew the global initiative would keep growing, but she also realized that her personal life needed more attention. She didn't want to wake up one day and realize she had missed out on the joys of being fully present with the people she loved. One weekend, Melanie took a trip to the beach with Jamal. It was a spontaneous decision, but it felt like exactly what they both needed. They left their phones behind, leaving the world behind for just a few days of simple pleasure, surfing, eating fresh seafood, and just breathing in the salty air. For the first time in a long while, Melanie felt at peace. She realized that, although she was still dedicated to her work, she was also allowed to carve out space for herself and for Jamal. She didn't need to be everything to everyone. She just needed to be present in the moments that mattered most. Back at Tesla, Melanie made a significant decision. She would scale back some of her direct involvement in day-to-day operations to ensure she could focus more on the projects that aligned most closely with her personal values. Empowering communities and fostering education. She proposed a mentorship program that would allow her to step into a more hands-on role with younger employees, sharing her story and guidance. It was a way for her to lead by example and cultivate the next generation of leaders, while also ensuring that she had the time and space to focus on her own well-being. Elon, though initially surprised by the change in pace, was supportive. "Melanie, you've built something incredible, and now it's time to share that with others on a deeper level. You've earned the right to focus on what brings you joy and fulfillment." As time went on, Melanie found that her life was beginning to reflect the balance she had always sought. Her new mentorship program flourished, and her initiative with Elon continued to make waves in the tech and education sectors. More importantly, she felt more connected to Jamal than ever before. They spent weekends together, creating memories that weren't tied to work but to the simple pleasures of being together. One evening, as they sat together watching an old movie, Jamal turned to Melanie with a thoughtful expression. Mom, do you think I could one day be a leader like you? Like a real leader? Melanie smiled, her heart full. Jamal, I think you're already a leader. A real leader is someone who has the courage to stand up for what's right and to make the world a better place, no matter how big or small. And you've been doing that since the day you were born. Jamal's eyes shone with hope. Then, I'm ready. With that, Melanie knew that her legacy was not just in the work she had done, but in the life she was creating with Jamal. They were a team, two people, committed to changing the world together, side by side. As the days turned into years, Melanie continued to build on her vision of a better world, one rooted in equality, opportunity, and community. She was no longer just a leader in the tech world. She was a mother, a mentor, and a living testament to the idea that anyone, no matter where they came from, could change the world. As Melanie settled deeper into her new role, balancing her work at Tesla with her passion for community outreach and her growing family life, she began to experience something that no amount of success could have prepared her for: doubt. Despite the strides she had made in her career and the positive changes she had fostered, a nagging feeling of uncertainty started to creep in. It wasn't about her ability or her goals. It was something much deeper, more existential. Was all of this really enough? Was the legacy she was building truly the one she had envisioned? It all began one quiet evening as she sat in her office, reviewing progress reports for her new initiative. The sun had long set, and the only light in the room came from her desk lamp. The weight of the silence was almost suffocating. There had been so much movement, so many people to help, so many decisions to make. But in the midst of it all, Melanie couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had been so focused on creating a legacy, on pushing forward, on building for the future. But now, in this stillness, she couldn't help but wonder, what had she sacrificed along the way? Had she given up parts of herself to build this empire of change? The thought of letting go of the momentum she had built was terrifying. She had worked so hard to get here. But in the quiet of the night, Melanie realized she needed a break, a moment to reflect and breathe. She needed to stop thinking about what everyone else expected of her and listen to what her own heart was telling her. The following morning, she decided to take a leave of absence from Tesla, something she had never even considered before. She would focus on herself, on her family, and most importantly, on reconnecting with what truly mattered. The decision wasn't easy. Her team had grown accustomed to her leadership, and the stakes of her work were high. Elon was supportive but wary. Melanie, I understand the need to step back, but I just want you to remember why we're doing this, he said during their conversation. Your work isn't just about business. It's about people. It's about the future. You're one of the few who can make it happen. I know, Melanie replied, feeling the weight of his words, and I will continue. But I need to step back to be able to give it my all again. I need to reconnect with myself first. That's the only way I'll be able to help others. Elon nodded. Take all the time you need. Just promise me one thing. When you come back, you'll come back stronger than ever. Melanie took a long weekend getaway, this time to the mountains, a place far from the demands of the corporate world. It was just her, nature, and the time to clear her head. With Jamal in tow, they spent days hiking, having long conversations, and taking in the peaceful surroundings. It was the first time in a long time that Melanie truly felt at ease, without the pressure of deadlines or expectations. One afternoon, as they sat on a mountain peak overlooking the valley below, Melanie turned to Jamal. I've been thinking a lot, she said quietly. I spent so much time building this life, this career, but somewhere along the way, I lost touch with myself. I didn't take enough time for what really matters. Jamal, sensing the gravity of her words, took her hand. It's okay, Mom. You've done so much already. But I think you're right. Sometimes we have to stop and look at what's in front of us. We can't keep running without looking around. Melanie smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. You're growing up so fast, Jamal. I want to be sure that I'm here with you, for you, not just as a mentor, but as your mom. I want to be there for the moments that really matter. The trip was a turning point for Melanie. She returned to her life refreshed, but not in the way she had expected. She didn't come back with a set of answers. Instead, She came back with an openness, an understanding that she didn't need to have it all figured out. It was okay to take breaks, to reset, and to question the direction of her life. And it was okay to step away from the whirlwind when necessary. She went back to her mentorship program, not with the same intensity, but with a more holistic vision, one that emphasized balance and well-being. Her approach was softer, more intentional. She focused on encouraging others not just to excel in their work, but to make sure they took care of their mental health and their relationships. It wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. It was about finding peace in the climb. One day, as Melanie was sitting at a cafe near the Tesla headquarters, sipping on her coffee, she overheard a conversation from the table next to hers. A group of young professionals, fresh out of college, were discussing their careers, the pressure to succeed, and the desire to make a name for themselves. "Everyone says it's all about the hustle," one of them said. "Work hard, get the job, and don't stop until you're on top." Melanie listened intently, her heart heavy with empathy. She had once been like them. Their ambition and drive mirrored her own youthful energy. But she now knew that the hustle wasn't everything. Success without balance could leave you empty. Without thinking, she stood up and walked over to their table. "Excuse me," she said, drawing their attention. "I couldn't help but overhear. I've been where you are, chasing success, pushing myself to the limit. But let me tell you something I wish I had known sooner. Success is only meaningful if it's built on a foundation of balance, peace, and genuine connections. Don't sacrifice your well-being for the sake of climbing higher. The climb will be much sweeter when you can enjoy it along the way." The group looked at her, surprised but intrigued. "Who are you?" one of them asked. "I'm just someone who's learned the hard way," Melanie replied with a smile. "And I want you to learn from my mistakes." Melanie left the cafe that day with a feeling of fulfillment that she hadn't experienced in years. She didn't need to be the top leader in the room. She didn't need to be the person everyone looked up to. What mattered was that she was living with intention and purpose on her terms. Her time away had been crucial, not just for personal growth, but for understanding that life wasn't a race. The real legacy wasn't about how many people knew her name, but about how she treated those around her and how she empowered others to live fulfilling lives. Now, more than ever, Melanie was committed to her vision of creating lasting change, not just through the company she worked for, but through the lives she touched. And in this moment of clarity, she realized something vital. The most profound legacy she could leave was not the work she did, but the people she helped and the love she gave. She had found her peace. Melanie had always known that change could be difficult. But as she dove deeper into her new approach to leadership, she realized just how challenging it could be to inspire real transformation. Not just in the world of business, but in the hearts of those around her. Still, it was a challenge she embraced fully. She was no longer just the figurehead of a corporation. She was a mentor, a guide, and, above all, a believer in the potential of others. The mentorship program she had started with Tesla was flourishing, not because it was designed to teach technical skills or help employees climb the corporate ladder, but because it encouraged personal growth, wellness, and creating a balanced life. It wasn't about putting people in boxes based on their job titles. It was about helping them see the broader picture of what a meaningful life could look like. But despite all her efforts, not everyone was on board with the changes. There were those within Tesla who still clung to the old ways, relentless ambition, high-pressure environments, and the culture of hustle. Some of her colleagues in upper management didn't fully understand her new direction, believing that focusing too much on well-being would undermine the company's drive for success. One afternoon, Melanie found herself in a tense meeting with the board of directors. The company had been thriving financially, but there was a sense of unease among some of the higher-ups. They had noticed a shift in company culture, one that was now more centered on mental health and work-life balance. "Melanie," said one of the board members, his voice filled with concern, "we've seen the positive effects of your mentorship program, but we need to ask, is this focus on personal development and well-being slowing down the company's overall productivity?" Melanie took a deep breath, her eyes steady. "I understand your concerns, but let me be clear. Taking care of our people is not a distraction, it's an investment. The work culture we've created, with its long hours and relentless pace, may have achieved short-term success. But I believe we're at a point where we need a long-term vision. People who are healthy, happy, and supported perform better. It's not just a business strategy, it's a human one. There was a long silence in the room. The tension was palpable, but Melanie stood firm. I'm not asking you to abandon your goals. I'm asking you to recognize that true success isn't just about hitting numbers. It's about the people who make those numbers possible. If we invest in them, we will see even greater results in the long run. One of the board members, a woman who had been quiet up until now, spoke up. Melanie, you've been with Tesla long enough to understand the pressures we face. But I think you've also been in a unique position to see the bigger picture. What you're advocating for, it's not a trend. It's a movement. Maybe we're ready to try something different. Melanie's words had made an impact, but it was clear that the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. While some of the board members had shown signs of agreement, others remained skeptical. Change was never as simple as convincing a few people. It was about shifting mindsets, adjusting years of ingrained practices, and truly making space for a new, healthier vision. But Melanie wasn't about to back down. She knew that real change would take time, and she was prepared to weather the storm. What kept her going was the ripple effect she could see unfolding around her. Over the next few months, the changes Melanie had introduced began to take hold. It wasn't a complete overhaul overnight, but small victories started to accumulate. More employees began to engage in the wellness programs she had introduced. Leaders who were initially skeptical started to acknowledge the value in taking breaks, setting boundaries, and addressing burnout before it reached a breaking point. One of the most impactful moments came when a senior manager approached Melanie with a revelation. He had always been one of the toughest figures in the company, demanding, relentless, and focused on results. Yet, in recent weeks, he had started to experience firsthand the benefits of the work-life balance initiatives. I have to admit, Melanie, he said, leaning across her desk one day, I didn't think your approach would work. I thought it would make people soft, but I've seen the difference it's making. Not just for the younger employees, but for the older ones too. They're more engaged, more willing to go above and beyond. I'm starting to think I've been going about this all wrong. Melanie smiled. It's not about being soft. It's about being smart. It's about recognizing that the people who make this company what it is need to be at their best. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. Only then can they truly thrive. Soon, Melanie's efforts caught the attention of the broader business world. Media outlets began to take note of her innovative approach to leadership, particularly the way she was reshaping the corporate culture at Tesla. Articles were published, interviews were conducted, and soon she was invited to speak at major industry conferences. However, even as her influence grew, Melanie remained focused on the personal connections that truly mattered. One evening, after returning from a particularly grueling conference, she found herself once again sitting with Jamal, reflecting on everything she had accomplished and everything she had yet to achieve. Mom, Jamal said, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment overlooking the city lights, I'm so proud of you. You've helped so many people, and you've changed how the world works. Melanie chuckled softly. It doesn't feel that way every day, Jamal. Some days it feels like I'm just barely holding it all together. Well, Jamal said with a grin, I think you're doing more than just holding it together. You're showing people what it means to be a real leader, someone who cares about others and makes the world a better place. Melanie looked out at the city below, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the life she had built. Thanks, Jamal. But I think we both know the real leaders aren't the ones with the biggest titles or the flashiest jobs. They're the ones who make people feel seen, heard, and valued. I've been lucky enough to have learned that. As the months turned into years, Melanie's legacy continued to unfold, quietly but profoundly. Tesla's culture had shifted in ways no one had predicted, and more companies began to follow suit, adopting similar wellness initiatives and employee-focused strategies. Her work had sparked a movement that had gone beyond business. It was a cultural shift toward holistic success, where people were no longer just cogs in the machine, but essential parts of a greater whole. And as for Melanie, she had found a new sense of purpose, one that extended beyond the boardrooms and the deals. She had come full circle, embracing not only her own well-being but helping others to do the same. She had become the kind of leader she had always aspired to be, a leader who knew that true change came from the inside out, and that the greatest legacy one could leave behind wasn't one of fame or fortune, but of humanity. In the end, it wasn't about being remembered. It was about making sure others had the chance to live lives that were remembered for the right reasons, full of balance, love, and the ability to dream. As the years passed, Melanie's influence continued to spread throughout the corporate world. What started as a simple vision, helping people achieve work-life balance and personal fulfillment, had blossomed into a full-fledged movement. Companies everywhere were reevaluating their priorities, shifting from the old mindset of hustle at all costs to one where employee well-being was just as important as the bottom line. But while Melanie's work at Tesla and beyond was gaining recognition, she began to sense that something was still missing. Despite all her success, she realized there was more she could do, particularly for the underrepresented groups in her community who still faced immense challenges. These were the people whose voices often went unheard, whose struggles were overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of profits and power. It was during a visit to her old neighborhood that she finally understood what she needed to do next. Walking through the streets where she had grown up, she saw familiar faces, people who were working hard, but still struggling to get by. As she visited local community centers, schools, and small businesses, the stories she heard stirred something deep inside her. There was so much more work to be done, so much more she could offer to help these communities thrive, not just survive. "Melanie, it's amazing to see how much you've accomplished," said Mrs. Thompson, an old friend and the head of a local community outreach center. "But I have to ask, you've changed so many lives in corporate spaces. Have you thought about what you could do here, with the people who really need it?" Melanie stood at the doorway of the center, looking around at the children and families who were gathering for after-school programs. It had been years since she had visited, but seeing the energy in the room reignited something in her. "I've been thinking about it a lot, Mrs. Thompson," Melanie said, her voice soft but firm. "I've been building up this idea for a while, and I think it's time to put it into action. The work I've done in corporate spaces has been rewarding, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. These communities need more than just corporate outreach. They need the same principles of self-care, leadership, and personal empowerment that I've been advocating for." Mrs. Thompson smiled knowingly. "You've always been one to lead by example, Melanie. But remember, changing lives isn't always about changing the system. It's about changing hearts, one person at a time." In the months that followed, Melanie set out to create a new initiative. This time, it wasn't about helping corporations perform better. It was about giving individuals, especially young people in underserved communities, the tools and support they needed to thrive. She called it Roots and Wings, a program designed to empower young people through mentorship, education, and emotional support, with a focus on building resilience, self-worth, and leadership skills. She wanted to offer these young people the chance to dream big, to believe in themselves, and to understand that their worth wasn't tied to the obstacles they faced but to the strength and potential within them. The idea was simple, yet powerful. Create a network of mentors from all walks of life who could provide guidance, encouragement, and real-life skills to those who might not otherwise have access to them. This included entrepreneurs, educators, healthcare professionals, and community leaders who would volunteer their time to make a difference. The launch event for Roots and Wings was an emotional one. Melanie, surrounded by familiar faces, old friends, mentors, and even some of the employees from Tesla, stood before a crowd of eager young faces. These young people, many of whom came from disadvantaged backgrounds, were about to embark on a new journey, one that would open doors for them in ways they had never imagined. "Today marks a new beginning," Melanie said, her voice filled with emotion as she addressed the crowd. "You are the future. You are the leaders of tomorrow, and I want you to know that you are worth every bit of the dream you hold inside. No matter where you come from or how hard the road may seem, there is always a way forward. You have the strength to rise above your circumstances, and I am here to help you find that strength." The room erupted in applause, but it wasn't the applause that mattered most to Melanie. It was the look in the eyes of the young people who sat before her, the look of hope, of possibility, of excitement for what lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, Roots and Wings began to take root in the community. The mentorships formed, the workshops were held, and for the first time in a long while, Melanie saw a new kind of light in the faces of those she was helping. These weren't just individuals trying to get by. They were individuals ready to break free from the chains of limitation and create their own futures. One of the young women who had joined the program, Maya, came to Melanie one evening after one of their leadership seminars. "I just wanted to say thank you, Ms. Melanie," Maya said, her voice filled with emotion. "I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I was smart enough, or good enough, or that anyone would care. But now, I know I can do anything. I'm going to college, and I'm going to be a doctor." Melanie's heart swelled with pride. "Maya, you always had the strength in you. I just helped you see it. I'm so proud of you, and I know you're going to do amazing things." Over time, Roots and Wings expanded. What had begun as a small local initiative in one city soon became a national movement. Melanie, with the help of her team and a network of passionate volunteers, worked to establish chapters in multiple cities, reaching hundreds, then thousands, of young people across the country. The message was clear. Everyone deserved the chance to succeed, regardless of their background. But as much as the program grew, Melanie never lost sight of the heart of the initiative. Every mentor, every workshop, and every young person involved in Roots and Wings was a step toward creating a society where no one was left behind, where every person was empowered to chase their dreams, regardless of the obstacles they faced. One day, as Melanie sat in her office, looking over the latest updates from Roots and Wings, she received a call from Elon. It had been some time since they had spoken, as their paths had diverged in recent years, but their friendship had always remained strong. "Melanie," Elon said, his voice warm, "I've been watching what you've been doing with Roots and Wings, and I have to say, it's incredible. I knew you had it in you, but what you've built, it's something special. How can I help? What can I do to support your work?" Melanie smiled, touched by his words. "Elon, I think you've already helped more than you realize. But if you really want to support us, you can do what you do best. Help us bring attention to this cause. Help us bring more mentors, more resources, and more opportunities to the communities that need them the most." Elon's voice was filled with enthusiasm. "You got it. Let's do this. You've inspired me, Melanie. Let's change the world together." As the program continued to expand and thrive, Melanie knew that her work was far from over. But now, more than ever, she was certain of one thing: Roots and Wings wasn't just an initiative. It was her legacy, and it was just the beginning. Melanie had always believed in the power of small actions to create big changes. As Roots and Wings continued to grow, that belief became even more profound. What started as a small mentorship initiative had become a movement that reached across the country, and soon, it was catching the attention of global leaders. But the growth came with its challenges. As the program expanded, the administrative load increased, and it became clear that Melanie would need to scale the organization in a way that maintained its personal touch. She was committed to ensuring that every young person who came through Roots and Wings felt seen, valued, and supported. One day, Melanie received an invitation to attend a global summit on leadership in education and empowerment. The event, held in Geneva, Switzerland, was gathering some of the most influential minds in business, education, and social change. Elon had recommended her as a speaker, and though she was initially hesitant, she knew it was a great opportunity to further her mission. Standing before an audience of thousands of people from different cultures and backgrounds, Melanie felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. It wasn't the first time she had spoken to a large crowd, but this was different. This was a room filled with people who could help amplify her vision, people who had the power to change entire systems, to reach millions. Her talk was titled, "Empowering the Next Generation: The Power of Roots and Wings." She shared her story, the story of Roots and Wings, and the stories of the young people she had met along the way. She spoke about the importance of emotional wellness, leadership development, and the need to nurture the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. "That's the essence of what we're doing," Melanie said, her voice unwavering as she addressed the crowd. "It's about empowering young people to understand their own worth and giving them the tools they need to make their dreams a reality. This isn't just about education or job training. It's about helping them see that they are capable of anything, no matter where they come from." The audience was silent, captivated by her words. As she finished her talk, There was a moment of stillness before the room erupted into applause. It wasn't just the applause of appreciation. It was the kind of applause that comes when people are inspired, when they are moved to act. After the speech, she was approached by several influential figures, including global philanthropists, educators, and corporate leaders. They expressed interest in partnering with Roots and Wings, offering financial support, mentorship, and access to networks that could take the program even further. It was a moment of validation, but also of realization. Melanie knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than herself. Back in the United States, the impact of her talk rippled out across the nation. People began to look at mentorship and youth empowerment in a new light. Companies started reaching out to provide resources and internship opportunities to the young people involved in Roots and Wings, while universities created scholarship funds for program participants. But even as her influence continued to expand, Melanie remained grounded. She never wanted to lose sight of what mattered most, the young people whose lives were being transformed. It was about the personal stories, the quiet victories, the young woman who had graduated from college against all odds, or the young man who had started his own business after completing the program. These were the moments that kept Melanie going. One afternoon, as Melanie sat in her office, going through emails and program updates, Jamal came in to visit. Now a young man in his mid-20s, Jamal had grown into a confident and compassionate leader in his own right. He had always been a pillar of support for his mother, but lately, he had begun to forge his own path. He was in the process of launching his own initiative focused on supporting young entrepreneurs in low-income communities. "Hey, Mom," Jamal said with a grin as he walked in. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something. I know you're busy with Roots and Wings, but I've been working on an idea. I want to combine our work, my entrepreneurial initiative, and your mentorship program. I think we can create a program that helps young people launch their own businesses while also giving them the leadership skills they need to succeed. What do you think?" Melanie leaned back in her chair, her eyes lighting up with pride. "That sounds amazing, Jamal. You've always had a heart for helping others, and this is exactly the kind of impact the world needs right now. How can I help?" Jamal sat down across from her, his excitement evident. "I've got the vision, but I need the structure. I want to combine the resources from Roots and Wings with the entrepreneurial skills I've learned. I think we could really make a difference." Melanie felt a deep sense of gratitude as she listened to her son. He was walking the same path she had started on so many years ago, and now they were going to walk it together. She could see the future unfolding before her, one where the work they both did would impact generations to come. As Roots and Wings continued to flourish, Melanie and Jamal worked side by side, combining their efforts to create an even larger initiative. Together, they launched a program called Wings of Innovation, which focused on helping young people from underserved communities turn their ideas into businesses. The program provided mentorship, startup capital, and access to a network of professionals who could help bring their ideas to life. The first class of Wings of Innovation was a diverse group of young entrepreneurs. Some were just starting their businesses, while others had already made strides in their fields. They were all driven by a desire to create change in their communities, and Melanie and Jamal knew that by giving them the resources they needed, they could empower a new wave of business leaders who would continue the cycle of change. In one of their first joint events, Melanie stood alongside Jamal as they introduced the young entrepreneurs to a panel of industry leaders. These were individuals who had built successful businesses from the ground up, and now they were here to help guide the next generation. "This is just the beginning," Melanie said to the crowd, her voice full of hope. "These young people have the power to change the world. It's our job to support them and help them find the confidence to do so." Jamal looked at his mother with admiration. "We're not just giving them the tools to succeed in business," he said. "We're showing them that they have the power to create their own futures." As the event came to a close, Melanie watched the entrepreneurs networking, sharing ideas, and building connections that would serve them for years to come. She knew that this was the legacy they were building together, one that would continue to grow, one that would outlive them both. And in that moment, Melanie realized that Roots and Wings was more than just an initiative. It was a movement, a community, and a force for good. She had built something that wasn't just about her. It was about creating a better world for all those who came after her, for every person who needed to see their worth and rise above their circumstances. The ripple effect she had started all those years ago was now a wave, a powerful force that would continue to inspire change for generations to come. And as she looked out at the world she was helping to shape, she knew one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. The years following the launch of Roots and Wings of Innovation, were nothing short of transformative. Melanie had gone from a young waitress with a dream to a global leader of change. Her journey had come full circle, and now, standing at the helm of these powerful initiatives, she realized that her mission had never just been about building a career. It was about creating a lasting impact, a legacy. With Jamal's help, the programs had grown exponentially. More than just expanding across cities, they had expanded hearts and minds. The vision they had set out to achieve was coming true, and the ripple effect was felt far and wide. Melanie's dream wasn't just a vision of success. It was a vision of hope for the future. A future where everyone, no matter their background, could thrive and find the courage to lead. As the organization continued to grow, Melanie began to realize that her own role was shifting. She had built Roots and Wings to empower others, but it had also empowered her. It had shown her the strength that came from working together, from lifting others up. And now, more than ever, she understood that her role would be to lead from behind, to support the new leaders who were emerging from the program. Young entrepreneurs, teachers, and community leaders who had learned to wield their power for good. One afternoon, Melanie sat down with Jamal to discuss the future. He had become a central figure in the growth of both Roots and Wings of Innovation, and his vision for the future mirrored her own. Together, they made the decision that Melanie would gradually step away from the day-to-day operations to allow for fresh leadership to emerge. She had nurtured and built the foundation, and now it was time to let others take the reins. "I think it's time for me to pass the torch," Melanie said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've spent years building this, but I've also spent years learning from the people we've helped. And now, I'm ready to let someone else lead. I've done my part, Jamal." Jamal, who had always admired his mother's strength and vision, nodded with understanding. "You've built something that will outlast both of us, Mom. You don't have to worry. I've got this. But you've been the heart of everything. The work you've done, the lives you've touched, it's changed everything." Melanie smiled softly. "We've changed everything together. You, me, the whole team. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about all of us. It's about the next generation of leaders, the young people we've been helping. They're the ones who will carry this forward." With the decision made, Melanie began the process of transitioning leadership to Jamal and a few other trusted mentors. The program's mission stayed the same, but the hands steering the ship were now younger, vibrant, and filled with new energy and ideas. Melanie still remained a guiding force, providing support, but the organization was becoming something bigger than herself. She had learned to let go, to trust others, and in doing so, she saw the next generation of leaders rise to the occasion. As the years passed, Roots and Wings expanded globally, reaching young people in Africa, Asia, Europe, and Latin America. The network of mentors and supporters had become a worldwide community, united in the belief that every young person deserved the opportunity to succeed, regardless of where they came from. Melanie traveled to different countries, meeting with young people who had benefited from the program, hearing their stories of triumph and resilience. Each meeting was a reminder of why she had started this journey in the first place. The faces of the young people she met, their hope, their ambition, their courage, kept her going. This was the legacy she had always dreamed of leaving. One afternoon, Melanie stood in a large auditorium filled with young people who were about to graduate from Roots and Wings. It was a day of celebration, a day to honor the hard work, the perseverance, and the growth that each young person had shown over the years. As she took the stage to give her final speech as the official head of the program, she looked out at the sea of faces before her. Some of them were now entrepreneurs, some were teachers, and others had taken on roles in healthcare, politics, and social work. No matter where they were headed, they all had one thing in common. They were ready to make a difference. "This isn't just the end of a chapter," Melanie said, her voice filled with emotion. "This is the beginning of a new journey for all of you. You've been given the tools to lead, the tools to empower, and the tools to change the world. I'm proud of each and every one of you. You are the next generation of leaders, and I have no doubt that you will continue the work we've started here. The world is waiting for you." The audience erupted in applause, but Melanie could hardly hear it. Her thoughts were with the young people in front of her, those who had grown from uncertain, struggling individuals into confident, driven leaders. She had played a part in their transformation, but now it was time for them to take the stage. After the ceremony, Melanie stood backstage with Jamal, watching the graduates celebrate. She felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The work wasn't finished, but it had evolved into something beautiful, something far beyond what she had ever imagined. "You did it, Mom," Jamal said, a proud smile on his face. "You built something incredible, and now it's in good hands." Melanie smiled back, her eyes filled with tears. "We built it together, Jamal. You, me, everyone who believed in this. It's never been about just one person. It's about all of us, working together. And I know that Roots and Wings will continue to grow, continue to make an impact, long after I'm gone." As she looked out at the graduates, Melanie knew that the legacy of Roots and Wings was secure. The movement she had started was no longer just an idea. It was a living, breathing force that would continue to change the world. She had done what she set out to do. She had helped people find their roots, their strength, and now they were ready to spread their wings and soar. And so, Melanie's journey came full circle. From the waitress who had helped Elon Musk to the visionary who had built a global movement, she had transformed lives, hers included. As she watched the next generation of leaders take flight, she knew that her legacy would live on, not in the walls of any organization, but in the hearts of every person she had ever touched.